Hey, Atlanta Knights! So last time somebody got fucked to death, or no, they got a hand job, and afterward they had tales of wild bathroom sex with our good old friend Bruce Lucent. So now it's time for chapter 24 in order to see what the fine people who have made this has been cooking. Chapter 24. The doorbell rang, and Irene looked up from the magazine article she had been reading over and over again for the last half an hour. She would not have been able to tell anyone, not even her best friend, Abby O'Neill. Oh, great, another new character! As a reminder, we're halfway through the book, and yeah, we're still introducing new characters. So, yep, definitely very friendly for the reader. Oh, she could have guessed, of course, and said the article was about women's fashion, the latest rage in New York, jawed pure or henna hand tattoos. But she would have just been guessing. The article was just chicken scratch that her usually well-tuned mind could not comprehend. Her thoughts were of nothing at all, nothing but the death of her lover, Henry Archer. Never again will their bodies glide together in union. Never again would she be able to run her fingers along his ample muscles. Never again will he kiss her. What? Okay, so Henry Archer just ended up having a sex change. Wonderful. All right. Oh no, that's me who doesn't read well. Whoops. That was the cruelest breakup of all. The doorbell rang again, and Irene came back from her thoughts of Henry. Was all she had left of Henry. That and the apartment. The mink was also hers. He had been giving to her, and she to him where she could. Very giving. But then Henry had been so handsome. Her best friend, green-eyed, slender Abby, had laughed at the idea of 20-year-old, blue-eyed, blonde-haired Irene dating a 60-year-old. Until she had seen his ripped back and bulging biceps on the trip to the Cayman Island Henry had arranged for the three of them and Henry's friend, Rory Edwards. Henry spent an hour in the gym every day. His pecs, abs, and biceps were to die for. If you know what I mean! But no longer. Henry was in the ground, dead from the car crash that took his life, and that of his Mercedes. Yeah, the life of his Mercedes. Oh my god. Both were black and hulks now. Yeah, black and hulks. One buried in the ground of exclusive Peach Barrow Cemetery, the other in a police impound lot. She will miss that Mercedes. What? So you're gonna miss the car, but not the actual person? What? Oh, alright. The doorbell rang a third time, and Irene stood. She placed a magazine on the end table in its place, next to the previous month's issue. All things in their place in Irene's living room. All things in their place. Yeah. There is no way out of here. It will be dark soon. There is no way out of here. Her heels clicked on the marble of the foyer. She paused in front of the gold-edged mirror. Her level, blue-eyed stare answered her look. Her shoulder-length blonde hair was pulled back into a tight bun, the same style she had worn to Henry's funeral. Tight-lane black skirt covered her voluptuous chest and buttocks. Yep. The 3-inch heels accentuated the bulge of her calf. What the? The mirror had no doubt she was a beautiful, strong woman. Nor will any man have doubted it, nor many women. At least those women so inclined to appreciate a perfect female body. Irene knew many who did. Abby, for one. Checking her eyes one last time for any redness, she pulled open the door and said in her contralto voice, "Yes, may I help you?" Andrew Venice had heard many contralto voices before, but none attached to a woman as beautiful as the one standing before him right then. Blue-eyed, blonde-haired, and round in all the right places. Irene Stevens, the mistress of the burnt and blackened millionaire industrialist and ex-bodybuilder Henry Archer, was a sight that sent a shiver down his rock-solid 40-year-old body. Also, I don't know what contralto is, so at this point I'm just going with the very wild guesses that I have. What that now blackened old geezer had seen in this 20-year-old beauty was clear. Wait, Henry Archer is 60, his widow is 20. Ugh, okay. Alright. Andrew Venice, newer type Will. He saw them on Beach Bottom Avenue, the ladies of the night who came out to offer their nylon and fishnet covered wear. Irene Steven was the same, but her price was higher when she could get it. Looking at the well-filled skirt she wore, Andrew Venice expected that she will fetch that price for a long time to come. Until the buttocks stopped working and the force of gravity could. And the force of gravity could no longer be. "Hello, I'm Andrew Venice, police detective," he said in his deep voice. "We met briefly at your friend Henry Archer's funeral." Irene knew what Andrew Venice was thinking, that she was a high-price whore, a woman of the night. She was, but it was a velvet night with champagne stars. "I know who you are, and I know what you're thinking," Irene said. "But you're wrong where it counts most." "I bet I am. May I come in, Miss Stevens?" "Do I have a choice?" she asked, stepping aside. "All have choices, Miss Stevens." Irene led the buff police detective into the living room. "What do you want with me during my time of grief?" "Answers, Miss Stevens. Answers to some questions." "Ask your questions, police detective." She sat on the sofa and crossed her legs slowly. The slide of nylon on nylon was the rasp of 1,000 tiny saws. "I'll come straight to the point. We know Henry Archer was murdered." Irene stood, her hand over her left breast. "Murdered? How do you know?" The act was good, Andrew thought. Very good indeed. Andrew could almost believe the shock was real. "Forensics, Miss Stevens. Forensics." "Oh, forensics!" The police detective was watching her closely. He meant to startle her, to scare her. Perhaps he suspected her. The thought scared her and excited her at the same time. Her, Irene Stevens, a suspect in the murder of Henry Archer! The brakes on his car had been tampered with, Miss Stevens. The thought of Henry stamping uselessly on the German-made brake pedal of his Mercedes over and over again to no avail sent a shiver down Irene's spine. Her stomach clenched at the thought of Henry's last frantic moment. She hoped that his last desperate thoughts were of her. Surely he had not been thinking of his wife, Callie? What the fuck? Oh my god, you are horrible! horrid! Indeed, but I face the horrid every day, Miss Steven. How do you do it? With a strong stomach and 1,000 push-ups every morning? I'm sorry, but if you do 1,000 push-ups every morning, I think you're just gonna spend the rest of the night in bed, or the day. Irene could see the cut of Andrew Vinnis' body, even through the dark suit he wear. Yep. For a police detective, the suit's quality seemed out of place. Italian, if she guessed right. The bulge at his side was not just from the gun in its holster. So does he just have a sideways dick? What is this? Andrew confirmed. Someone with access to the car. Someone close to him. Someone who knew German cars. Someone who perhaps spent a year in school in Munich and took auto shop there. Tampered with the brakes on his car, causing it to carry him out of control on Peach Valley Road on that fateful night. I went to school in Germany. I took auto shop. I know. But I know quite a bit about you, Miss Stevens. I know you are. Where? Henry Archer's mistress. I knew you were one of the last people to see him alive. But when my father was stationed in Germany, we studied the C200 330 in auto class, and we drove a E-series. Not hard for a dedicated murderer to figure out, Miss Stevens. I know nothing about it. I did not murder Henry. Then who did it, Miss Stevens? Tell me and I'll go easy on you. I know nothing about it. The day after Henry's death, you were seen coming out of Rory Edwards' house. It was a lie. Andrew Vinnis didn't like saying it, but Irene Steven was a nut that he had to crack one way or another, and he didn't mind using all his bastard police detective to do it. Rory's a friend of both Henry and I. He was comforting me. Rory even went with us to the Cayman Islands. Yes, I know that too. Andrew Vinnis said with satisfaction. Do you know what Archer and Edwards were doing in the Caymans, Miss Stevens? Yes, of course. We were spending time on the beach, and in the evening we went dancing. It had been an absolutely wonderful time. 3 days of sun and fun with her best friend and her best man. She had worn a red bikini that was a size too small, thanks. Abby had been jealous and Henry had been wild about it. The perfect vacation. I've been creating zizzy by being a cheap prostitute, and that was the best day of my life.
Yeah.
Oh my. I was so... I felt like that the ghost of Henry Archer came in here. Oh yeah, by the way, Killer...
Spooks.
Oh yeah, by the way, Killer MC, if you actually want to read alongside and everything, I will give you a link, just so that you don't have to view the stream with all the delay and the tiny text.
Sure. I don't know nothing about this.
That's okay, there's nothing that needs to be known. It's a bad book that was intentionally badly written in order to show off a vanity press that they were just absolute craps. And hey, they totally did their job.
Nice.
All right.
What page are we on?
We're on page 169.
Hell yeah. Got so far.
Yep. And in the mornings, he and Edwards visited their bankers to deposit large sums of cash. Whoops, that was supposed to be the other characters. I slipped in. I wouldn't know. Don't lie to me. Tell me what you know of Rory Edward and his business venture with Henry Archer. I don't know anything, I tell you. Henry and Rory were just friends. That's all I know. Yep, at this point, I was just, Andrew was nearly certain she knew nothing, but he had one last gambit to play. Then perhaps he could trust her and use her to help him find the real killer. I have enough evidence to charge you with the murder of Henry Archer. You had access and motive. You have the skills and desire. Tell me what I want to know. Motive? What motive will I have to kill Henry Archer? His reconciliation with Kelly Archer. He was leaving you for his wife. Couldn't stand the thought that he might dump you. Leave me for his wife? Absurd! Then you'd be out in the cold. Will your long legs and full body ever get you another man as rich as Henry Archer? Couldn't afford to lose him, but Rory Edward is almost as rich. Did he put you up to this? I don't know what you're talking about! Andrew took Irene by the arm, squeezing her with a strong hand. Her knees sagged as he shook her. I'm talking murder, Miss Stevens. Cold-blooded murder, planned by his business partner and executed by his jealous mistress. Irene burst into tears and wailed, I love Henry! I love him so much! Andrew stepped back. Even while crying, Irene Stevens was a beautiful woman, and as all his own instincts told him, innocent. I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Stevens, and I'm sorry for putting you through that. Irene Stevens turned away from him. Damn you! She hissed. Yes, damn me. I'll find my own way out. The door slammed, echoed through the cavernous emptiness of the apartment. Irene wiped the tears from her eye. It had served her purpose. Andrew Vinnis was convinced she was innocent.
Intrigue.
Yep. So it's time to check out how this all continues out on chapter 25. At this point, do you actually want to do a reading, or
should I give you a break? How long are these chapters?
I'd say they're about generally like 4 or 5 pages.
All right, I'll read chapter 25, I suppose.
Yep. All right.
Okay. So chapter 25. And then there was that time they all went to see the Atlanta Braves at Turner Field. Irene Stevens couldn't have been more excited. Their seats were great. Andrew Vinnis had dugout tickets for the season, as he always did, being so incredibly well set up. Andrew called Irene, and he said he was taking Richard Isaacs the next game, would she
like to come too?
Would she like to come too? Because he would love to have her along. And she, of course, shrieked, really, yes, of course.
Baseball! Yes!
Baseball! Irene loved the energy and commotion of the enormous crowd in the stadium. She loved their front row seats, right up next to the green railing, where she was currently draped over the bar, watching the players or watching their cute butts avidly. She's just draped over the bar. Whoop.
Yep.
Hey, good looking. Andrew was a marvelous guy. He really was. She was considering coming onto him because he was like 20 years younger than Henry. God rest his soul. Whoop. And he was a nice looking to sort of like George Clooney. And on a good day, Rowan Atkinson on other days, because Rowan was in his own way a little hottie, really. I don't. After Henry, any man would appear a bit on the small side by comparison, anyway, and not nearly as rich. This prose, man. Richard didn't have as sweet a personality as Andrew, but then few men did. But he was very well built. He had the shoulders of a water bottle and the waist of a ferret. He was reddened by his many sporting activities, which he managed to keep within addition to his busy job as a stockbroker. And that reminded Irene of safari hunters and virile construction workers, which contracted quite sexily to his suit and tie demeanor. Jeez. Irene was considering coming on to him, but he was older than Henry was when he died, even though he hadn't died of natural causes, but he was dead. Richard would die too someday. Oh my god. What
It's like this paragraph is essentially Atlanta Night Duck.
Both of the men couldn't have been nicer to Irene. She was literally basking in their solicitor's attentiveness. He nestled her cozily in between them and heaped compliments upon her. Then they started talking about the ball players and discussing their merits, which started to bore Irene a little, really, although she was far too sweet a girl to ever let it on. For a while, she had amused herself with deciding which of the players had the sexiest name, but finally she was stuck between Roman Colin and Armando Almanza. And even that diversion got boring.
Hi, I am Richard Collin. Hello.
So she leapt out of her seat and leaned over the railing to watch the game more closely, and wished that baseball uniforms weren't so concealing of the many lovely male bodies sweating in the heat of the sun beating down on the picturesque turf spread out like a vast green carpet where someone had vacuumed with mathematical precision, making these swish marks in the shag that made neat patterns on the carpet as that just scream, it's clean, and really vacuumed until someone walks around, and then all you get are just footprints everywhere, and finally the carpet just gets squished down and sick looking. I don't know what to mean anymore.
That was the train wreck of all the metaphors.
They said this is all done on purpose, right?
Yes, that is all badly written on purpose.
Irene still listened to the conversation the men were having because she was a good listener, but it was like they were talking in code, and trying to figure out what they were saying was beginning to bug her. She was ultra aware that her very short shorts were giving her a wedgie, just short of becoming thongs. Only she didn't have a thong on, or anything else on but the shorts. Except her t-shirt, that is.
Okay, so she has nothing but the t-shirt.
The t-shirt and the shorts.
Yep.
She didn't mind that Andrew and Venice were seeming to stare more at her than the ball players because she figured she was more interesting anyway. She tossed her long blonde hair and chewed her bottom lip, wondering what Richard had meant when he had said to Andrew, "Hell yes, I'll inform. I'm an informant. That's what I do. And I inform." Andrew seemed to know instantly, though. He said back to Richard in a low voice, "I've been a police detective for a long time, and I've got plenty of people reading skills. So I already knew this long before you told me." Wow. He kept talking about that on, and it was boring and bugging Irene, who was no fool for a young woman in her 20s. If only just barely in her 20s at that. And she had heard the rumors flying around Atlanta, but no one was going to pull the grapevine over her eyes.
What?
Some people were thinking there was something suspicious about Henry's tragic car accident, God rest his soul. And if there was something suspicious about it, then there was someone suspicious behind the something suspicious. And that someone could only be someone like her, or Henry's wife, that arrogant woman. That arrogant woman. It's hard not to miss Henry, and how well he made her feel about herself and all. They had spent so many fun hours together at Henry's private gym, where he showed her his former bodybuilding techniques that produced that massive pecs and washboard abs, and he loved to watch her on the treadmill. Business talk made her head hurt, and Henry, despite being a millionaire industrial, never talked about business much. He sometimes talked about his wife, Callie, and Irene didn't mind listening to him talk about Callie because every other phrase practically was "not like you, my sweet Georgia moon pie," and she had to agree with him that Callie was pure, unadulterated evil. Okay. But now she had to think about business because she'd lost Henry. And while her apartment was paid up for the year, she knew Henry couldn't renew the lease, and she'd have to come up with a plan for her future. She'd responded to an ad, well, a flyer really, that had been tucked under her windshield wiper for about a month. Although it was hard to remember how long ago it was, it had been, for Henry had perished unexpectedly. She was clearly on her way to a fabulous career because of that ad. It had sounded very exciting. Educational opportunity to enter the glamorous world of pampered porn stars.
Pampered porn stars?
Yes.
Does
The
that
price was
mean these
steep.
are just porn stars that are wearing diapers?
I hope not. The price was steep, but Irene's bank account had been left in a healthy estate because of Henry, and her sometimes wished Henry was still as healthy too, but his legacy might provide her with a future after all. She'd called the number on the pastel pink sheet that very evening and chatted to Jack and Steve for hours about their course, which included the latest in analysis with sophisticated computer software that monitored her daily progress in a scientific manner. This is all very
The
legit.
science of porn, ladies and gentlemen. Signing up today.
She signed up and began her lessons right away, which she found extremely enjoyable. Computers were everywhere, and they had all these cameras hooked up to the computers to analyze her performances from every angle to give her constant feedback about what she could improve on during her next lesson. It was all very high tech, and Irene was impressed with the program Jack and Steve had designed, and the selflessness they exhibited, throwing themselves into her education as they tirelessly taught her just what it takes to be a major adult motion picture star, even. How it takes to be a major motion picture star, even if they were geeks who wore glasses and white socks and watches with lots of buttons when they were having sex.
What the?
So why do they wear all that?
I don't know.
They said one of her hottest natural talents was the ability to make beautiful stingers, which were X-rated parlance for spit, really. Jack said it was even more of an asset in the business than her naturally large bosoms and their voluptuous hips and buttocks.
Preternaturally.
Sure. Steve said if they ever ran out of lube on the set, Irene would be invaluable. Nice. Irene's lessons were taking up a lot of her time, and they were even tossing in free hours of tuition anytime she came over to their place. They always sent her home with lots of material to study, from pie charts showing exactly how much time she'd spent doing DPs and reverse cowgirls, and so on to DVDs that she was to watch to gain insights into how the actresses excelled at facials, which wasn't her forte so far, but apparently grinning while getting hit in the eye was essential in the business. And Irene couldn't stand her eyelashes clumping together, so she was still working hard on getting used to that. Andrew said in a growl voice, "We will get to the bottom of this." and Richard harumphed in a good-natured but skeptical way. Irene suddenly felt famished and told the two that she was going to go to the concession stand for a bite to eat. And then she had to practically beat them off with a stick, if she'd had a stick, that is, to get them to let her goes by herself,
What?
which she really wanted to do because she wasn't sure what she wanted when she got there.
What is this train wreck of a phrase?
I don't. The bustle of noise of the audience made her feel like a stalking goddess who prowled through a jungle of people like a beautiful, unique bird of prey swooping through the vast flocks of odd penguins, secretly and powerful and utterly desired by each man that walked by her, and she felt her voluptuous chest swell with happiness at how it felt to be in her soft, peachy skin, but firm, too, like a fresh peach, not something over-ripened in a cut-rate grocery store that's been sitting out getting squeezed by pensioners too many times before ending up being carelessly self-bagged and dropped off a counter in a rusted-out double-wide trailer in a run-down trailer park. She was walking away from Frankly, My Dear, with her foot-long drenched in mayo and mustard. In mayo. In mayo and mustard and ketchup and relish, and just wrapped her warm pink lips around the large hot dog when a young man had stared at her with a frozen expression as he slowly reached up and removed his baseball cap and held it reverently over his heart. You, he stammered, as she tried to smile sweetly and yet finish taking a bite of her hot dog. You're, he continued valiantly, you're voluptua. Irene was slightly puzzled, but quickly concluded that he must have meant voluptuous. So she nodded and said, "Thank you." "I go there every day," he said. And Irene said, "Where's that?" And he said, www.xxx.com.
Please tell me this is a website that exists. It's time for me to figure out xxx.com on YouTube. Oh yeah, it actually is a website.
Interesting. And Irene was totally baffled and told him to have a really nice day after she swallowed. It was like the whole world spoke in code sometimes, and Irene did not plan on becoming a cryptographer because it gave her a headache to worry herself over what the world went on about. But Irene's dreams of becoming somebody someday were as nourishing as a foot long on a bright sunny day in a place full of screaming fans and the smells of men's colognes and spilled beer and admiring glances that followed her all the way back to the dugout where Richard and Andrew welcomed her, returning presents with open arms.
Also, to answer everyone's question, no, I did not visit the website. I just looked up on Google what it was. I'm not going there because I'm just expecting that if I go there, my PC will suddenly have like 300 viruses.
Oh no. They even agreed her hot dog, what was left of it, looked delish, and that her condiments were creative.
How is ketchup, mayo, and relish is fucking creative?
Well, I never had mayo on a hot dog. Irene beamed with love for the whole world and hummed, "Take me out to the ball game," beneath her breath, and generally relaxed in the sensual warmth of the day, with her head leaned over on Andrew's hard chest and her toes in Richard's lap getting rubbed while Andrew stroked her honey silken hair around her apricot ears and lingered over the sun-flushed cheeks with gently tantalizing fingers. So she dozed off a while and missed the Braves scoring the winning touchdown.
But that's not even baseball! Wrong sport!
But she awoke when the crowd exploded with joy and hugged Richard and Andrew in a outpouring of pure happiness, really. Except for the bit about missing Henry. God rest his soul, of course.
So, yeah, essentially, this is why I decided to read this. This is so beautiful. Alright. Oh my god. Who
Well,
would have thought that baseball was gonna be fascinating? Alright. Chapter 26. Kelly pulled up into the driveway and turned the key. She sat for a moment and stared at the house. It was a crimson scarlet red color with a sharply slanted roof, which was graced with a cacophony of Christmas light that twinkled and sparkled like color stars. It reminded her of her own house with her own Christmas light, and she smiled a soft smile. She loved Christmas. Reminded her of where her family will huddle around the tree singing songs and opening presents. For 20 years, they had used the same tree. Oh god, yuck. A tall, broad pine that smelled faintly of pine. She loved that tree so much that she never took it down. For 30 years, she kept the tree just as it was, awash with lights and shiny balls. Henry thought her daft, and oft his accounting friends will come over for Easter dinner and see the tree standing proud in the corner with its light and balls, and Henry will try to quickly shoo them away to the dining room, but they will have none of that as they'd stand before the tree and rubs their chins in thought and say in their funny accent, "It's over, you know." But Kelly would just smile her soft smile as she spooned out the mashed potatoes. Kelly stepped out of the car and shook the chill from her voluptuous bones. The snow crackled beneath her feet as she made her way along the driveway and up the icy steps, taking each with care. It reminded her of the church and their icy steps, only much more so. What of all day? Why the church? She knocked on the door, which made a muffled, hollow sound beneath her knuckles, like the sound of an unripe cantaloupe. She was picky about a cantaloupe. Thanks. Oh, so yeah, they kept it for 20 years, and now it's 30 years. Who needs time consistency? The door opened, and Kelly was greeted with her friend Yvonne. Kelly smiled and shifted voluptuously as she stared at her friend. She reminded her of a volcano, her molten red hair flowing moltenly down her back and over the sandy white beaches of her shoulder, as hair is wont to do. What?
Mm-hmm.
Can somebody tell me what this phrase is supposed to mean?
Hairs want to do.
Yvonne smiled back. Her lips glossed in a shade of lipstick that reminded Kelly of the house paint. Come in, Yvonne said, her scintillating green eyes dancing playfully in the evening darkness. Kelly closed the door behind her and tossed her coat onto a nearby chair. She took a seat on the couch. Okay, no, never mind. I thought that there was just like a seat that was on the couch and everything, but no, just me being dumb. And ran her fingers along the coffee table. Breathing deeply the dark and heed the aroma of furniture polish. What the fuck? How can you have so much no taste? Yvonne slinked toward the kitchen. Dinner's almost ready. Make yourself a dome. Callie stood and straightened her cashmere dress and proceeded to a small bar on the other side of the living room. The plush carpeting squished between her toes, and she smiled a soft smile. It reminded her of the dreamy time she had spent with her beloved Henry shopping for carpeting. She'd happily skip between rolls of pastel blues and ruddy browns and giggle as she rubbed her cheek against their fuzziness. The salesmen were always quick to help her, no doubt as delighted with carpeting as she was. I think it's more like, can you please get this crazy lady who's just rubbing every carpet with her face? And cheerfully waved goodbye when they left, a roll of bunny pardon carpet hoisted on one of Henry's broad shoulders, and Kelly clinging lovingly on the other. Kelly examined the bottles and swished the content of a few. She tapped her chin and foot as she pondered over her decision. Scotch? No. Vodka? No. Rum? No. Tequila? No. Gin? No. Red wine? No. White wine? No. Rosé wine? No. Sherry? No. Very dry sherry? No. Brandy? No. Grand Marnier? No. Vermouth? No. Crème de cacao? No. Crème de menthe? No. Schnapps? No. Whiskey? No. Bourbon? No. Rye? No. Ugh. You see, we have a very insightful look at Kelly's thought process, where she's very analytical about booze.
I guess you're right.
Kelly sashayed toward the bookshelf with its myriad of books. She ran her fingertips along the spines and was amazed at the wide variety that Yvonne had collected. Tall books, thin books, fat books, short books, books with brown covers, book with white covers, book without covers, hard books, soft book, hard books that felt like soft books, and everything in between. It reminded her of a library with lots of books. What the?
I see.
Are there like 3 neurons in fucking Kelly's?
Oh, I don't think she's very smart now.
Yvonne emerged from the kitchen, bearing a large plate with a large ham on top, which had small cherries and small pieces of pineapple stuck into it with wooden toothpicks. The scent of ham and cherry and pineapple wafted languidly toward Callie, and she breathed deeply of its heavenly scent. "It smells heavenly," Kelly nodded, and Yvonne grinned impishly. Kelly took a seat at the table and unfurled her napkins. She placed it on her lap, as she was always taught, and arranged her silverware just so. She poured herself a glass of milk from the fridge and began scooping out potatoes for the both of them. Yvonne poured herself a drink and melted into the chair across from Kelly. She brushed a strand of molten hair from her eyes and proceeded to carve the ham. Kelly watched intently. Juice streamed from the ham in rivulets, like saliva drooling from the fierce jaws of a wild dingo, poised over the dead carcass of its prey in the dingo world. It smells heavenly.
Nice.
All right, here's the wild dingo here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Yvonne dropped the slab onto Callie's eagerly waiting plate and garnished it with a cherry. Callie popped the cherry. Yeah, that's right. Atlanta, Australia. Oh my god. Alright. Callie popped the cherry into her mouth and smiled a soft smile. Stop doing that! You cannot write that in a book. That's just like saying, I'm angry with anger. Its sweetness reminded her of sweet things, and that made her smile. Wow, this chapter is so empty. I love it. Yvonne dabbed at the corner of her mouth with a napkin and washed down the ham with a chug of wine. I bought that lovely dress today, she chirped excitedly. Which one? Callie inquired. The lovely one, Yvonne explained. What does Roberto think of it? Callie queried. Yvonne giggled like a giggly girl. He thinks it's lovely, she responded as she shifted voluptuously in her seat. It's just right now, unfortunately, I cannot show my whole seat, but hey, I guess a voluptuous motion will be Yeah, sadly you cannot see anything. You're a lucky woman, Callie commented, tossing her mane voluptuous. Thesaurus, who needs this? She sighed vehemently. I do really very much miss Henry. At least he didn't leave you broke, Yvonne grunted as she struggled with a particularly fatty piece of ham. I looked across the table at Yvonne nervously and stood... Wait, who is I? What the fuck is I? Why is there a first-person narrator now? Okay, I looked across at the table at Yvonne nervously and stood, making my way to the living room window. I could see the colors of Christmas blinking rhythmically in the window's reflection, and it eased my heart somewhat, though not a lot. I swallowed nervously as I tried to think of the best way to say to my friend what I wanted to say, because it was hard to say. Words stumbled in my mind like clumsy children falling down a flight of stairs.
Oh no.
What the fuck? Words stumbled in my mind. Okay. And I went to the bathroom to relieve my increasingly incessant bladder. The smell of lilac assaulted me, and I smiled softly. I sat and tinkled. The sound reminded me of my sister's wedding. It was a grand affair with balloons and streamers and clowns.
Ah, it's nice.
Yeah, we totally are in weddings now. So reminder, if you have a wedding and you need a streamer, hey, yours truly is totally ready. Okay. And my sister all dressed up in a brilliant white dress and the soothing tinkling sound of the raindrops in the punch bowl. I returned to find Yvonne spooning gobs of custard into a bowl. Dessert? She questioned. Callie shook her head. I'm a vegetarian. Yvonne nodded vigorously and took her custard to the living room. Is something wrong? She asked me. Callie baby stepped her way to the living room. It's about my stocks. What about him? Yvonne muffled through her custard. Callie stammered. Her gut nutted and she took a bite of Ivan's custard. Yep, I'm a vegetarian. Custard, the first thing I think of whenever I'm vegetarian. I won't get some, custard. But thank you. Okay, wait. Okay. She loved the cool fruitiness on her tongue, and she smiled softly. I want to sell them, she finally said at last. Why? Yvonne spewed. Ellie took a seat at the kitchen table. I love Henry, she insisted, really meaning it, but it's time for me to move on to greener pastures. Yvonne shrugged voluptuously.
How do you do that?
I don't know, but I gave my best rendition of voluptuous shrugging on stream. So sell them. Ellie said knowingly. Therein lies the rube. I don't want to be seen like I'm bailing out of a sinking ship, and I heard through the cherry vine that you might be able to help me, if you get my meaning. She hinted with knowing winks. No! Yvonne said with a deep negativity. The corners of Kelly's mouth droop like saggy breasts. Is that really the comparison you want to go with?
Yes.
Why not? She interrogated.
Drooping like them saggy tits.
Because, he von quip. Because. The word reminded Callie of grade school and Mrs. Freeman's history class, where she had learned of the cotton gin and asked why it was called a cotton gin when it had nothing to do with gin. And Miss Freeman glared at her as she often did, and with stern arm folded across her rigid chest, she said, "Because," and lifted at that. And Callie smiled softly. "Please," Callie pleaded. "I'm sorry, Callie," Yvonne sighed sorrowfully. Wait, how do you sigh sorrowfully? "I wish I could help you, but I have my own green pastures to think about. Roberto and I, what we have been a beautiful thing. A truly beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. And I can't risk losing such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing." Kelly's eyes narrowed so imperceptibly that no one even noticed. "Even for a friend," she warned. "You're a beautiful friend. But what Roberto and I share are more beautifully beautiful than our commonly beautiful friendship." Kelly,
So beautiful.
Kelly rubbed her suddenly throbbing head with her fingertips in slow 2 3/4 inch circles. "5!" she half spat. 1/4 shriek, 1/4 shouted, and she snatched her coat from the couch. She flung open the door and stormed outside, her bosom heaving with rage, stopping only long enough to smash a twinkling Christmas light with the heel of her shoe.
Damn.
Beautiful. Alright, before moving on to chapter 25, I'm kind of just reminded now, hey, I forgot my drink, so...
Gotta get that beverage. Her angry, heaving boobs. My boobs are filled with anger. 25% shriek, 25% shout, 50% good writing.
I don't know, 50% good writing is very generous, I'd say.
I mean, it amuses me at least.
Oh yeah, speaking of the honorary chapter 27.
Uh,
The Atlanta Night Effect, ladies and gentlemen.
Maybe I'll let you have this one. Maybe I'll pick up 28.
Alright.
How about?
Alright. It was early in the morning in the first part of the day.
I see.
What a strong opening. Like, I'm sorry, but if that was the first line that I got in a thread script, I will immediately say thank you next. The sun was just coming up. Bruce sat at his morning breakfast table. The newspaper was in front of him. His black silk monogrammed dressing gown barely concealed the rippling muscles of his chest and back. You could tell he had not shaved yet from the dense yet attractive forest of blonde stubble on his cleft chin and sculpted cheeks. He rubbed its aquiline nose, and when he reached up to push the soft hair blonde back from his manly forehead, his hand encountered the bandages still there. He frowned, a gesture making ripples of thought on his brow between the limpid blue pools that were his eyes. "I must remember what happened," he told himself sternly, his deep resonant voice trembling huskily with emotion. He still could not recall anything about the automobile accident that had sent him to the hospital with a severe head injury, that the bandage on his head now covered the 18 sutures that a top-notch surgeon at Saint-Yvan Hospital had spent so long in carefully suturing into his brow. He tried and tried until sweat popped out on the smooth skin of his forehead and glistened there, but he still could not remember a damn thing. Damn it! He had to! He just had to! "Meow," said the neighbor's cat at the window. It was not Bruce's cat, but sometime he let it in and fed it. It was a very expensive purebred Siamese. Had the cat but known it, his blue eyes were exactly the same shade of the limpid blue pools that were Bruce's eyes. Go away! Shouted Bruce, his despair and confusion making him uncharacteristically grumpy with the cat that he sometimes fed and petted. Just leave me alone! But an instant later, he regretted his temper. He opened the window and let the cat in, found some milk for it in the refrigerator, and carefully chopped up some leftover cooked chicken livers with a few sardines in a can that were in there. The cat purred while he ate it. Would that I could be as sublime as you, a small feline friend, Bruce said wearily, sadly, depressedly. Petted the cat a few times, and then went back to his chair. He sat down on it. Outside the window, it was morning. The sun was just coming up. The wind was blowing sweetly through the Georgia pines. He thought, for just a moment, how lucky he was to live in Atlanta, Georgia, in the southern part of the United States. At this point, I'm just regretting more and more that fucking quote, where I just said, hey, Atlanta is not in the south. Suddenly, Bruce's eye fell on the newspaper on the table in front of him. The headline seemed to shriek at him.
Millionaire industrialist Henry Archer dead at age 60. Tragic car accident claims his life. Kelly Archer now widowed.
His eyes crawled frantically over the newspaper, devouring the awful and confusing details of the death. The reporter had written a good but a grisly report on the millionaire's death. Bruce cringed as he read of the brightest star of blood on the shattered windshield where Henry Archer's head had smashed against it. The reporter noted that the man's body still gripped a cell phone in one lifeless hand after he was dead. Had he been talking on the phone when he died? Bruce hated it when drivers in other cars talk on the phone while they were driving. It was certainly a dangerous and rude practice. Perhaps Henry Archer's death had been the result of his own rudeness and carelessness in driving while talking on a cell phone. And his eyes were suddenly trapped like wolves in jaw traps. One single detail from the newspaper article seized him by the throat and squeezed like a noose around his neck. It was the date and time of the accident. 4:03 p.m. on July 20. No! It can't be! Bruce shouted the words. He stood up from his chair. The Siamese neighbor's cat jumped in terror. Meow! It cried piteously. Meow, meow!
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Pitty Pat. Bruce apologized to the Siamese cat. I didn't mean to startle you, but I think that Henry Archer's accident happened at the same date and time that mine did. Oh, look at me. What am I coming to? Talking to a cat. I'm a successful software developer, not some kind of a crazy man, aren't I? He stood up from his chair, paced around the room. Then he made himself go to his leather monogram briefcase and take out the doctor's report from his hospitalization. His eyes slid swiftly down the papers, then suddenly snagged on the very information he sought. There it was! The doctor had written down that the emergency medical people from the ambulance that brought him to the hospital had brought him that his accident had probably happened at 4:03 p.m. on July 20. The very same day and time that Henry Archer's accident had happened. He exclaimed, It has to be a coincidence! It just has to! Bruce shouted, then he made himself calm down. Walked back to his kitchen table and sat down. He looked at the newspaper there. The bloody tragic headlines still screamed their unimaginable news up at him. Below the big print of the large headline was a society photo of Henry Archer and his wife Kelly Archer. Kelly was in a breathtaking lace evening gown by Christian Dior. Beside her, looking stricken by his wife's breathtaking beauty, was Henry Archer in an impeccable black tuxedo by Ralph Lauren and a white shirt and black ties, a black tie. Even covered by a tuxedo, Bruce could see that Henry Archer had still the muscular body of the bodybuilder he had once been, but was no more now that he was 60 years old. Diamonds glittered on an immense pendant at Kelly Archer's throat. Diamonds bigger than pearls hung from her earlobes, shining like soft icicles. Well, at least she will have a lot of money now that she's dead. At least she isn't left poor and destitute, pushing a shopping cart down the street and living in a cardboard box in an alley and eating leftover McDonald's food from a dumpster. At least there's that to be thankful for. Then the coincidence of the times of death hit him all over again. Can there be a connection? He had to ask himself. Meow, said Pity Pat, his soulful blue eyes shining up at Bruce. The cat seemed to want to help him. Cats are naturally sympathetic animals. Not true, but hey. And Pity Pat was no exception. He could see that the big muscular human who sometimes fed him chicken, gizzard, and salmon was distressed. His little heart went out to the man. Meow, he said again, softly. Bruce stooped down and petted the cat. I know you want to help. Cats are naturally sympathetic animals. I just don't think there's any way you can help me, little fellas. I have to do this myself. I have to find out the details of my car accident. I have to remember exactly what happened to me that day. I'm the only one who can do it, Pity Pat. The only one. Bruce decided to get dressed. First, he will take a shower, being very careful of the bandage on his 12 stitches that now seamed his forehead. He went to his bathroom, was tiled in sandstone and umber. The towels match. Look. He stepped into the hot, stinging spray of the shower, dropping his silken bathrobe behind him on the mat like a discarded flower petal. He took up a big bar of sandalwood soap and soaped the dark mat of hair on his chest. He washed under his arms, and then his leg and feet. And then he washed his arm and neck. He wished he could shampoo his hair, but that will get his bandage wet. So he had to not do it today. Rinsed the soap off himself, stepped out of his shower and toweled off. He was glad he kept his body in such good shape. Someday, a woman will appreciate what good care he had taken of himself and the firm muscles that corded his bronze arms. Not many software developers cared what they looked like. Some of the software developers he knew looked like soggy mushroom people who would live too long in the moist dark of their offices. Okay, so if there's any software developer into my chat, can you please tell me if this is what you're like? Just curious.
What was it again?
Not Bruce. He knew that this was
Not
the
Bruce.
only body he will ever get, and that he had to take care of it. If
Soggy
not for
mushroom
himself, then for the love and admiration of the woman who will someday share its pleasure with him. Wait, it's... He got dressed quickly, put on Hedy Bauer taupe slacks and a shirt and a pale blue plaid, pulled on a pair of black boots. He looked good in a rugged, outdoorsy way. Couldn't have looked at him and thought, he's a computer software developer. You would have thought he was a forest ranger, or maybe even a mountaineer guide. He looked at the mirror and smiled a sad smile. Yes,
No.
he looked tough today, but he will have to be tough too. He knew what he should do. He should go straight to Kelly Archer. That will get him the information he needed. Be able to discover if his terrible car wreck and Henry Archer's terrible car accident were connected in any way. Try not to think of Kelly Archer as she had looked in the newspaper photograph. He will not think of her soft blonde hair and ringlets on her pale forehead, or her soft brown eyes staring out in the page at him. She will be well taken care of. That was what was important, wasn't it? That she didn't end up living out on the street now that her wealthy industrialist husband was dead. Goodbye, Pity Pat, he said as he left the apartment. Meow, the cat replied. It was as much of an answer to his questions as Bruce Lucent will get that day. Yep, action Bruce, go.
Action Bruce.
All right, chapter 28. Do you
All
actually
right.
want to take this one?
I'll do it.
All right.
I'll do it.
All right.
Let's see. Chapter 28. The funeral had been hell. Funerals are bad enough when you don't know the dead guy at all. And they're a pain when you just have to show up socially, or else everyone will think you're ungrateful jerks with no respect for someone decent and kind. As all dead guys are, irregardless of how they lived their rotten, two-timing, sadistic, pathetic, discombobulated, senseless, irreligious, unthinking flakes, debauched, foul-mouthed, obnoxious, deviant, gross, adulterous, murderous, gluttonous, alcoholic, lazy, indolent, filthy, grotesquely indecent, lunatic lives.
What the
Or that
fuck?
you've just come for the food afterwards, or to show off your latest dress, or to spit in the coffin while nobody's looking. And funerals for true beloved dead guys are awful because, after all, someone you'd wanted to spend your whole life with is dead in the coffin. And although he's really stiff now, you'll never get to enjoy that ever again. And all those people around you, all that hypocrisy and sycophant and wallflowers and show-offs are all gabbing and staring at you and critiquing your red eyes and running mascara and eyeshadow and expecting you to be brave or hold it all in or keep a stiff upper lip or expecting you to go out with them afterwards and let them bawl you senselessly so you can forget the dead guy and fall passionately in lust with them instead, and besides, it's all so bloody expensive that it's going to use up most of the insurance settlement in the estate. And then, what is you supposed to live for, on hell's sake?
What is this? Oh my god!
What is you supposed to live for hell's sake? Come on.
Oh my
Even worse are funerals for beloved dead guys who are married to someone else, so you have to go kind of in disguise and make like you were just friends with the guy instead of having wild sex with him and trying out every page of the Karma Sutra together.
The Karma Sutra?
The Karma Sutra. And wondering
what the
just
fuck
how
is the Karma Sutra? Is
So,
that a
yeah.
way in order to make it so that you get good, you mesh the good and the bad conscience together to make the perfect mix?
give a friendly blowy and you get good karma from that.
Yeah, I guess.
And wondering just how the heck you were supposed to live now. Although since you aren't liable for the bloody expense of funeral, you might come out more or less even, or even ahead of his wife and kids in that department. That was the kind of funeral Irene and Stevens had gone to.
Also, I don't think that people in the chat know this, because the book is the Kama Sutra, not the Karma Sutra.
Yeah, it's Kama Sutra.
Yeah.
That's right. And the Lutz had been inconsiderate enough to get himself killed driving Irene's sporty little Maserati that he had bought for her, bent it and broke it and splattered it with his blood. And ichor. All kinds of bloody fluids. All more or less foul and sticky, and all resonant over what was left of the rich, ripe, red leather upholstery. Though the insurance settlement from that ought to help her get on with her life, especially if she invested it wisely. Maybe it could finance some education so she could be a model or an actress or a porn star or something. Wasn't she studying to do that?
I'm gonna give you a hint, Killer MC. All of the chapters in this book are totally disconnected from each other. There's no continuity.
Alright. She'd have to talk to the guys down at the club, if she could still get into the club now that Henry with an I, Henry was dead, so she couldn't go in on his arm, or to meet him, or to exercise and keep her body nice and svelte and trim and athletic for him, because she for damn sure didn't want to lose him to some tramp like that Margaret Eastman or whoever. That Margaret, jeez. She'd show up at the funeral bawling her eyes out like they'd been the best buds or lovers or something. What a hypocrite. Probably hoping she could get a job from one of his friends or get laid by some hopeful dude there for the widows and orphans or something.
What the fuck? What funerals have this person been attending? I'm legitimately worried now.
Afterwards, she went back to her condo now, with the jacuzzi and his den and all the clothes and jewelry he'd bought her, and all that high-class furniture and stuff. Henry had a thing for leather sofas, leather chairs, a leather mattress for the hell's sake, leather underwear, leather whips and monocles, even a braided leather carpet that they'd made love on for more than one. I'm just thinking about a braided leather carpet. What is that? She'd have to clean out the den. Henry had not let her go in there for ages, maybe. There were bodies in there, like in Bluebeard, all the dismembered bodies of your maidens that he'd carried off and secretly ravaged before cruelly cutting them into bits. She'd stayed out of it, like he said, never once peeking into his den. So she still had all her bits, and then some. Amazing what they could do with silicon and saline these days. His den. Henry holed up in his den like a wild beast, hoarding his prey and coming out to hunt when he hungered for food or lusted for sex or thirsted for liquor or water or will or juice. The
Isn't
back
he like a fucking industrialist?
I guess. No. The back to his den or out or to hunt the lives and fortunes of other men, or off to his wife, the abominable the abominable Galliard sure took up so much of his time. But he always came back. Always came back for her athletic body and her wild sex and her margarita and tequila sunrises and omelets and steaks and chops and their videotapes, the ones recorded by the hidden cameras in the bedroom while they made love like wild beasts, like penguins of the Sahara diving into the sand and running wildly after feasting on sand sharks.
Okay. I think the guy or the gal who made this was like, okay, for my chapter, fuck any subtlety.
She envied those penguins. all that hot sand to swim through. The raspy grains sliding over their feathers as they hunted in wild packs, baying at the moon and diving deep, deep down into the dusty depths of the dry, smooth sand. What would penguin leather be like?
What the fuck?
Would it have lots of dense patterns of whorls where the feathers grew, like ostrich leather did? Perhaps she could have something made of penguin leather, to remind her of Henry. A love seat or a fine set of whips and straps. Perhaps she might travel to the Sahara someday to watch them from the tops of the pyramid. Mount Fujiyama off in the distance, duplicating the smooth, slanted sides of the pyramid.
Hold on a bit. Just gotta do some. Okay, Mount Fuji. Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't think I need to actually Google this to know that this is wrong.
Oh, Henry, you jerk. Why didn't you ever take me places like that? Why didn't we travel instead of being cooped up and hiding in your den, running like penguins or ostriches or lions in the leather cushion and couches and chairs and rugs? I guess this is our inner monologue.
I don't.
You used to love it when I pulled on a leather strap around your neck when we made love. You knew I needed you too much to ever pull too long or too hard. You loved it when I saddled you and rode you around when I put the bit between your teeth and the golden spurs with the softly rounded rowels to your flanks. Not enough to draw blood, but enough to goad you on, around and around the condo, around the balcony and up and down the stairs. And then we tumble together again, and you, with you panting and sweating and full of lust. Perhaps I can sell the tack to someone with a pony. But I'll keep the spurs, the golden spurs, and the whips.
You're gonna sell the fucking equipment that you used to ride your husband and put it on a horse? It's
What?
probably fucking disgusting.
I'm sure she'll wash it. Just a week before Irene Stevens came back from the funeral and decided to clean out Henry Archer's den in their condo. Henry Archer sat in his favorite red leather chair. Irene had a thing for leather. Practically everything in the condo was leather, or leather upholstered, or leather decorated, or something. Henry leaned back in his red leather chair and mused, thinking fondly of the cow. The cow that had given its life for his comfort.
Well, before we have wild sex, I would like to thank my friend the cow for making all of these beautiful accessories.
He wondered what this particular cow had been like. Had it had a name? Had it had feelings and thoughts, or was it only driven by its own stupidity, like his last one, like his last one-night stand? A new thought occurred to him. What if it had been made into steak, chops, soup bones, and McDonald's veggie burgers? How is that possible? Also, he remembered the steak he had eaten last night and wondered dimly if this cow had contributed to satisfying not only his rheumatism, but his appetite as well. His thoughts strayed to the paper that was laying limply on the antique desktop in front of him. What was it like? What was it that he was going to write? His mind seemed to be full of fog, like the fog of New York City. But he had lived there once as a boy, before he was rich. New York made him think of other famous cities he had visited, like France and Rome. This great city of France. He wondered if they had cows in Rome. Where in time is this happening right now? Isn't Henry dead?
Yeah, he's dead.
Henry puzzled over his letter to Irene. He had to word his thoughts just right. She was a beautiful woman, but his heart belonged to Margaret Eastman. Oh no. He loved the way her curvaceously voluptuous body fit into her tight nurse outfit. She was a bit older and more cultured than Irene was. He let out a long sigh as he thought of her. He dug around his desk until he found a cigarette and lighter, and a lighter one of the drawers. Let me read that again. He dug around in his desk until he found a cigarette and a lighter, one of the drawers. Okay, I was right. That didn't make sense. He lit up and thought he needed to put it delicately and not break her heart. Finally, he decided on the perfect words. He put pen to paper in the same way some men put knives to wrists.
Oh god, it's a literary suicide.
When he was finished, he looked over his. When he finished, he looked over his work and smiled as he read the sentences. Hey, baby, the sex was great, but I never liked blondes much anyway. I found someone better. Still, love you lots, Henry. He had to admit it. He was Shakespeare among Jerry Springers.
No, he's not! You're a fucking abominable piece of garbage! What the fuck?
He placed the letter in an envelope and addressed it to Irene. Then, setting the letter on his desk, he strode out to his Mercedes to buy a diamond necklace for Margaret. Irene Stevens tried the knob on the door of the den. Henry's wild den that he had loved so much and had been so secretive about. It was unlocked, and so she went in at last, after all these months. Now that Bluebird was dead, mahogany shelves lined one wall, lined with canning jars full of clear fluid and cloudy lumps. There was an ebony desk and a red leather chair. There was filing cabinets and a large black safe. There was a rack of pistols and rifles and shotguns, holsters for the pistols, and shoulder holsters and belts. 2 of the rifles had big scopes on them, and hunting knives, and fillet knives, and buck knives in sheaths, and cameras, a small one, like a lighter, a couple of bigger ones, and 3 with huge lenses and tripods. What's with the details?
I don't understand. I am so lost.
So Bluebeard. Oh, what? Wasn't it Bluebird? Whatever. So Bluebeards did save bits, body parts, and he hunted. She looked at the jars, pale, fleshy bits, and skin resolved into a cock and balls.
What?
Hitchhiker, Cincinnati, August 1999. Red one. An eyeball. Waitress, June 2000. A kidney. Roadkill. Tennessee, May 1998.
So is the guy just a fucking serial killer?
I guess.
Hey, I'm gonna collect body parts for my collection.
She shuddered, but her loins warmed, thinking of the wild beast, the hunter, her mount.
Fuck off.
Irene looked in the file cabinet next to the gun rack. The top drawer was filled with ammunition, shotgun shells, rifle bullets, pistol bullets. The rest of the drawers were filled with papers full of names and dates, and pictures of people doing all kinds of things. Some of it was porno stuff, but there were other pictures too.
Just in case that you needed to be reminded, Atlanta Night is not entirely about sex.
The other file cabinets were much the same. Folders of pictures and notes. Some good porn, but a lot of it was boring stuff.
Damn, that's subpar porn. Why am I keeping it in my den of iniquity and lust?
There were some letters on the top of the safe, all addressed to the post office boxes. She opened one, and there was money inside. She pocketed it. She'd have to go through all of this stuff. There was probably money in the safe, too. She wondered if she could sell the jars on eBay.
No! Nobody's gonna buy whatever the fuck you keep in the jars. Fuck.
She turned to the desk. There was a single envelope there, and her name was on it. She opened it. Irene read the letter, and then stood there for a long, long time. She cried at first, but then the tears slowed, and a grin surfaced. A nasty grin. Last laugh, Henry. I get the last laugh. She'll never have you. None of them will ever have you. Ever. And she took the packet she'd gotten at the mortuary. The very expensive one. The one that she'd paid one that she paid the embalmer so very much for. There were empty jars on the bottom shelf and a can labeled alcohol 200 proof. Oh my god. It's just 100% alcohol.
Yep, somehow.
She unwrapped the packet and slid the cock and balls inside the jar and filled it with alcohol.
What's your fucking plan here?
You're mine now, Henry. You'll always be mine. She found a label and wrote on it, Philanderer, Atlanta, March 2004. She put the jar on the middle shelf next to the hitchhiker.
What? What the fuck?
Yeah.
Oh my god, what a train wreck. Alright, chapter 29. Probably not more shocking than chapter 28, because my god. Archer Nance looked at the clipboard in his hand as the main doctor at the hospital where he worked to save people's lives. It was his duty to tell them about their disease and injury, but he didn't want to talk to Bruce Lucent. Bruce was a big, important software developer and didn't like it when people or things didn't go his way, so Archer news wouldn't be taken well. Wandered to the hospital cafeteria where he got a ham sandwich to eat because he was very hungry. It had been a very long day and he'd had to perform surgery on 2 different people since he had got to the hospital early that morning. One had had a heart attack and needed open heart surgery, and the other had to have her appendices out. Wait, is this really how it is? She had been very pretty, and he had to tell himself not to think about that because he had to concentrate to take out her appendix. He ate a sandwich quickly and then got a Diet Dr. Pepper to drink. It was his favorite, and he got worried sometime that he was addicted to the sweet caffeinated drink. Archer looked at his watch. 7:15, it was time to check on the people on intensive care, including Bruce Lucent. He just couldn't get away from him. Turn. Which one was his room again? Oh yeah, it was in the south wing. Archer and Nance turn and start marching down the hall towards Bruce's room. He sighed as he marched down the hall towards Bruce's room. On the way, he passed a pretty nurse, Margaret Eastman. He stared at her beautiful curves, then cursed himself silently for staring at her. It just wasn't proper, but it was hard not to stare at her luminously curvaceous body and her soft curvy cleavage. She was so pretty. That was the problem. With this hospital, too many pretty nurses and patients were here. Maybe he'd ask her out to lunch or something sometime. As he continued marching down the hall, Margaret turned to him. Hey, she said, then I'll see you earlier. You were taking care of Bruce Lucent, she queried, looking at his nice thick muscles. He was pretty hot, she thought. Maybe she will ask him to lunch, but not now. He was in the car accident with Henry Archer last week, wasn't he? Well, she asked him, looking him up and down now. Oh yes, she was hot with all those muscles. What a stud. But she wasn't looking for him. She was looking for Lucent. Maybe he could tell her who Irene Stevens was. Henry never really had, but she had seen her name on his address. What? What is this fucking train wreck of a sentence? Oh. Archer and Nance took a drink of his Coke, brand new drink here, savoring the cool sweet drink as his fizzled down his throat. Yeah, he was probably addicted, but he didn't really care. Stress will kill him anyway. Or maybe a car crash, because there were a lot of them these days. There had been 2 in the past week, Bruce and Henry's. He would probably take up smoking cigarettes if his boss hadn't yelled at people who smoked and fired them? What? Wow. I know that life is harsh on smokers nowadays, but in 2005 it was hardcore. Okay. Yeah, why? He wondered. Do you want to talk to him? Yes, I want to ask him about this girl, Irene Stevenson, or something like that, 'cause I think he might know her, she stated calmly. Well, I can't let you see him, but I can ask him for you, he declared, looking at his watch again. It was 7:30 now. Oh crap, I need to check on a patient. And he turned and left her standing in the hallway. Archer entered Lucin's room. He was eating a pork chop and the doctor winced. He was vegan and he didn't like... Yeah! You got a ham sandwich, you fucking asshole! You're not vegan! And didn't like seeing other people eating meat or wearing leather, like the leather on Bruce's important brain case that was leaning against the bed. "Hi, Nancy!" exclaimed Bruce, who had finished his meal by now. They had gotten to know each other by now. The car crash was almost a month ago. He sat up and grinned at Nance, who didn't like being called Nancy, because it was a girl's name, and he was a very muscular, athletic guy with a lot of sexy muscles. But he didn't want to upset the software developer, because he might get mad at him. Lucen sat up and put the remains of his lamb chop aside. "I was just wondering where you were, because I want to talk to you. I think I'm better enough to go home now, don't you?" He pointed to his neck, which no longer had to have the foam brace on it anymore. He was glad because it hitched like when he was a kid and broke his leg and had a cast. That had hitched, and so did the neck brace, so he was glad he didn't have to war it anymore. Whoops. Somehow I went way back in the past.
Oh no.
Okay, there we go. "I don't think it will be a good idea," expostulated Nance angrily. "You still need a lot of therapy for your legs, and you can't drive again yet." "Then can you tell me, doctor, what about some people?" questioned Bruce Lucent. Dr. Nance started pacing around the room, back and forth, back and forth. "People's lives are covered by the Privacy Act, Mr. Lucent." Whoa, I'm sorry. Pinned the doctor to his patient. "I can tell you about anyone at the hospital, if that's what you mean." "Well, it was more about the accident that almost killed me." Bruce Lucent sat up straight, a dangerous look on his face. Nance knew Bruce was used to getting his own way for the past few years, sighing he got rich. So he sometimes got more violent than sometimes another person might when the same thing was going on. Nance stopped pacing up and down and... Up and down?! Okay, so you're just floating in the air now? And sat down in the chair next to Bruce's bed. After all, what could the software geek do? His leg was still in traction, or at least had been until yesterday, and he could probably not move very fast yet either. He had good muscles, though, almost as good as Nance's, that he worked out for hours to get, and still had, despite being older than Bruce. He ran his hand through his sandy brown hair and blurted, "That's the police job. I know they came here more than one time to talk to you about the accident. They don't tell us doctors about that stuff, and we don't need to know." Bruce thought about the young cop who had questioned him. He had been asking questions, not telling him anything. If he knew more about the accident, he hadn't told Bruce. But he bet this doctor knew more than he was willing. He could tell by looking at his face. It was a face that kept secrets. Hundreds of secrets every day, bits. "You know I can make a big donation to this hospital if you can get me the information I want." Bruce spurted out. "You know me well enough by knowing to know that I'm the sort of person who wants to ask questions, not answer them. So maybe I can make you think. Here are some names, and not from your hospitals either. I need to know what that Henry Archer did. What does Irene Stevens know about his? No, I was wrong. There is one person from the hospital, a nurse named Margaret." "He must think I'm like a candy stripper who sits and tells everything she knows," thought Nance to himself. "Maybe I do know something I won't tell about Henry Archer. A candy striper named Nancy, must think. And does he mean Margaret Eastman for the nurse in this hospital? And how soon will that big donation come once he's not in the hospital anymore? He'll forget it fast enough, and my hypocritical oath will be down the toilet. That's not the whole doctor's take, by the way. Bruce watched Archer Nance trim, mustache face, and thought that Nancy boy wouldn't tell him anything. It was it closed down and saw a secret hiding there. Too bad he had spent all his time working out or studying computers. He didn't spend enough time with people, so he didn't know body language, and Archer Nance probably spoke it like a native. The native body language. So he could sit there with his shoulders all hunched up and his face closed over his secret. And it's so oblivious that he knows what I mean and could tell me what I want to know. Wait. So... Wait, what? Okay. Alright, then since you don't want to tell me what you know, even if you do know, how about you just make me more comfortable here, since you won't let me go home either? You could start with that pretty nurse. She was standing outside my door talking to one of my friends that came to visit me. She looks like her uniform is painted on with medium light brown hair. That's the nurse I want, not the one who looks like she had prunes for breakfast and is older than my grandma. Bruce sat up straight in his hospital bed and ran his hand through his long black hair. How many times is his hair changing colors? Thinking that he needed a haircut really bad. Also, wasn't he supposed to have a bandage around his hair too? I'm sorry, sir, but the hospital does not assign its personnel like that, spat Archer Nance. If Nurse Eastman is who you mean, she's in one of the floor nurses on this floor, so I can't assign her here anyway. Then move me to her floor. I will get much faster with her being the one who gives shots in the butt. Bruce expostulated. She works in maternity. That should show him for trying to throw his weight around Todd Archer Nance to himself. And the way he's acting, I won't tell him what I know, even if I was going to, which I was, but now I won't. So maybe I should get pregnant. Worried Bruce Lucent, hysterical. When Nurse Wagner tells you to do your therapy that will get you out faster than joking with me, quip Archer Nance. Suddenly he thought to himself that Bruce Lucent asked him about hiring Stephen, and so had Margaret Eastwood. And Bruce Lucent also asked him about a nurse whose name was Margaret. So what did Margaret Eastman now? That just made it even surer that he will not tell Bruce Lucent anything. He could not have this sort of thing going on in his hospital. Archer Nance ran his hand through his sandy brown hair and stood up. I'm sure you'll be able to go home in a few days if you do what you're supposed to do that the nurses tell you. Oops. Wait.
What you do? What you do?
I don't know. I am totally lost.
How'd you get lost?
I don't know. I hit the key by accident.
The hell? That's not even. There we go.
Okay, there we go.
The 6.
So what was it you came in here to tell me anyway, Doctor? Queried Bruce to the doctor. Oh, nothing. I was just checking to see how your leg was out of its cast and if you still needed the neck brace. You better use that neck brace when you use your computer you have there. Archer Nance pointed to the laptop computer case next to the bed. It's in its leather case that got all scuffed up in the car wreck. If you hurt your spine worse, you'll never be able to program again. Bruce Lucent was tired of Dr. Nancy telling him what he could do and couldn't do. Why did he come here to stick his nose in, if not to talk or answer questions? Did he hope Bruce will tell him something? Not what? This hospital was a hotbed of all sorts of things going on. He hasn't been there for nearly 2 months without figuring that out. But now he knew that Dr. Archer Nance was an enemy, not a friend, and he will look out from now on. A nurse, Not prune-faced Wagner, but cute with short curly blonde hair and a really nice ass brought in Bruce's lunch right then. So Dr. Nance stood up, so straight and muscles even if he was old, fast out of his chair and left the room like walking out of a TV courtroom. Bruce smiled at the nurse. "Hey, cutely, I haven't seen you before. Are you dessert?" The nurse smiled back and even giggled a little, which Bruce hated girls who giggle, but she was cute anyway. While she was putting the tray over his head and unloading the pork chops and mashed potatoes and lima beans and milk and jello and chocolate cake, he even patted her butt and she just giggled again. He hated lima beans, but he didn't say anything. If he rang the bell and made somebody take them away, maybe it will be Hare. And he wouldn't have food all over and could maybe get to know Hare a little better. Too bad he has this huge cast on his leg, which is suddenly back on, by the way. It made it kind of hard to anything he wanted, but sure, he didn't stop him from wanting it, from waiting it, almost as much as he wanted to know what was going on, and Wood tried and succeeded in killing Henry Archer. Oh boy! All right, chapter 30. Do you actually want to take this one?
I'm good.
Alright, so I guess I'm... Alright, chapter 30. Andrew Vinnis parked himself in the boot right beside the four of them, wondering how much of this place he could be expense account. Figured almost nothing, and when the waiter in tight black pants and a black turtleneck came by, he only ordered an orange juice. Hell, even if he'd been off duty, he figured there was no way he'd be able to afford booze in this joint. With its wood paneling and dim lighting and fancy wine list, to say nothing of a clientele that ran in higher circles than I. But he was working, and knew he needed every ounce of his detection skills to listen through all the background noise in the nightclub. It was just nice to be out of the Atlanta heat, overbearing, even at this time of the evening. All four had already met by the time he managed to slip in, but he had to go about it easy and careful to make sure that none of them made him. Lucky that the booth he was in had opened up, and that the people leaving had unwittingly given him cover. He'd even have a chance to risk a peek over the edge as he'd sat down, noted who was sitting where. On the opposite side, furthest away from Andrew, sat Isaac Stevens, father of Irene Stevens. He had a salt and pepper beard and hair that was cropped close to his head, about 50 years old. Next to him was Archer Nance, that doctor, about the same age as Stevens. He was well-built, quite trim and muscular and athletic, with sandy brown hair and a thin mustache. Beside Nance sat Rory Edwards, also very well-built. Andrew remembered that Edwards was 60, but there was no way in hell he looked to be over Andrew's own age of 40, aside from maybe his fashionable glasses that lent an air of respectability and intelligence to what at first appeared to be a middle-aged Chuck. Finally, closest to Andrew sat Richard Isaacs, a 66-year-old who did well. Andrew knew manipulating stocks. Andrew knew this becoming the ruddy-faced but well-built man was also a police informant, which kept him in the game while eliminating many of his worst opponents. Oh yeah, that's right, Rory died like in chapter 24,
what?
So yeah.
What?
Thank goodness he's back. Edwards cleared his throat shortly after the waiter brought over their drink and said, "A toast!" The other three men mumbled in agreement. "To my old friend Henry Archer, may he rest in peace." All four leaned into the center of the table and clinked their wine glasses together, then drank to his memory. "Wish I'd known him as well as you," said Stevens. "Being good friend with a millionaire industrialist is always a good career move, Isaac," said Nance. He took another swig of his wine and then smiled to show that he was just joking. The other three men laughed, although it took Stevens a bit longer to find the humor than the other. Isaac shook his hand then, looking a little lost in thought. It's a son of a bitch, dying in a car crash like that. Guy's only 60, got a young beautiful wife in Cali, and better goddamn shape than any of us here. The guy was once a champion bodybuilder, Richard. Wait, yes, that's right, that's a good one. Said Stevens. Not like a Mr. World or anything like that, but he had those muscles and he knew how to carry them. Of course, he was in a better shape than any of us here. Hell, I do well enough with racquetball at the racket club and polo at the polo club. But I could never hope to be cut like he was. Shit! Even my daughter Irene told me she admired his body. The others laughed at this, and Nance hooted. What? Hoot. Evans reached over and jokingly slapped him across the top of the head. Rubbing his head in mock pain, Nance leaned back after setting his glass back down on the table. I was working that day at the hospital when they brought him in, you know. Isaacs drained his glass and signaled for another, then leaned forward, interested. Do tell! Nance shrugged. Bruce Lucent was there, recovering from his own car accident. Word got up to me somehow. I'm not sure if someone told because he was so famous and so rich, or if maybe someone knew that he and I knew each other. Pause and finish his wine, then also wave at the waiter. Not that it was needed, since they were well known in the club, and the waiter was already sashaying over with a tray carrying 4 more of the same. By the time I got down to the ER, the cops were there, and Kelly too, and they weren't letting me in to see him, even though I am a doctor. Frowned at the memory of this, felt a small piece of rage break to his normally implacable surface as he thought about the insult of such treatment. But then remembered where he was, and the fact that they were there to honor the memory of their friend, and he choked it back down, followed its bitter taste with the tannins and fruit of his favorite dry red, an expensive Richard Boer 1987, kept in stock exclusively for him. I've heard rumors that a cop is talking this case, Kroll Edwards. Isaacs, the police informer, sprayed some of his drink, choking, as did Venice, still listening from the other side. He wiped up the orange juice with the sleeve of his jacket. But the man on the other side had not heard them. They were laughing so hard at the mess that Isaacs had made. Where? Isaacs tried to catch his breath. Where did you hear that? Edwards arched an eyebrow, the long untrimmed and wild hair below his forehead counterpointing the motion. Let's just say that word gets around.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds to me like he's been calling into question the very life that Henry lived. Don't know what I'd do if he came to me casting aspersion on my old dead friend. Luckily, over in the other booth, Venice had set down his orange juice, because otherwise he would have ended up spitting more across the table or else choked on it. And considering how expensive a lousy, well, not lousy really, since it was freshly squeezed just for him, orange juice was in the place. The thought of wasting any more almost brought tears to his eyes. Oh no, the poor orange juice. Why?
No, my juice.
But still, hearing a potential threat against him caused a reaction that normally would have been humor, but based on how in shape all of these guys was, had him worried they could work him over pretty good, with or without a racket or polo mallet. Of course, he had the law on his side, but these guys moved in circles with all the big-time judges. Any case will be a toss-up. I hear that Henry was into something nasty, said Nance. Venice here perked up like tiny distant early warning line radar stations at the sound of this. Edward grunted. You hear lots of stuff, I'm sure. That doesn't mean any of it is true. He shrugged his massive shoulders. Besides, anybody with as much moolah as he had, he didn't need to stick his hand into the muck. He'd just pay some lackey or tootie to do his work for him. Or maybe some shell companies to keep the traces off of him and let him make a few extra tax-free simoleon, answered Stevens. So then maybe this cop is onto something, replied Nance. Except that maybe he's investigating someone else, somebody who knew about any extracurricular stuff Archer was into. Raised his eyebrows, a motion that created a quilt of thick wrinkles on his otherwise normally smooth forehead. Then he leaned forward and whispered, quiet enough so that Venice could only make out a few words. Baby, murder, mother, him. Whatever had been said, it drained what little atmosphere remained at the table, left him cold and thin like the roof of Mount Everest. And the fourth men, fit as they were no mountain climbers, and so they all drained their drinks, paid the tab, and left. After a suitable interval, Phineas got up and followed them, making sure he downed the rest of his fancy schmancy orange juice first. Alright, chapter 31. Yeah, anytime you want to feel reading something, just let me know, okay?
I'll read it. I'll read 31.
Alright, excellent.
Alright. So let's see, chapter 31.
Yep, page 214.
Yes. Bruce skimped around the seedy waiting room of Nicholas Stick Maxitoff. Stick's secretary sat at her gunmetal steel-gray desk, pecking out a letter on an ancient Underwood typewriter. Her cowfish udders almost burst out of her tight polka dot dress, the pale yellow color almost perfectly matching her clearly dyed hair. Cheese in a page boy flip, so retro for a moment. Bruce thought it looked hip. When's Stick gonna be back? Bruce implored seemingly.
Yeah, actually, it's when's Stick gonna be back?
That is true. How many times do I have to tell you? The blonde whose name was Sally, but who went by Bubbles, responded irritatingly.
Bubbles?
Yeah. Well, he'll be back when he's gonna be back. Yeah, don't rush Stick, you know. She typed another letter. Looked over at a form, then typed another letter. Looked again, typed another letter, then looked again, typed another letter. Holy lated.
What? What does this? What?
I don't know. I've never seen that. Anyway, Bruce wanted to scream, wanted to pick up the black rotary dial phone on her desk and throw it through the frosted glass window of the office door. He wanted to slap Sally, whose nickname was Bubbles, and then maybe ravage those others and do the Madonna on those big red lips. Except he kept thinking of Callie. Poor Callie. Still pining over the death of her beloved Henry, whose memory not even Bruce's hot sex could constipate. Although he was working on that. How had it come to this? Bruce asked himself. How had he, the teenage hacker who got into the Homeland Security system and fed them fake Al-Qaeda communications for over a month that resulted in a Code Orange alert that shut down international airports for 2 weeks? How had he, hotshot software developer Bruce Lucent, come to this? Using a private investigator to find out the truth about his birth.
What is this new twist?
I don't know. Well, kid, the wizened old dick had explained 2 weeks ago when Bruce came to him. The dick explained, you see, in some backwater southern counties, they just haven't gotten around to computerizing vital stats. So here he was, pacing and driving Bubbles crazy, he hoped, waiting for Stick to come back with the truth. Why Stick had called him that morning, from a payphone of all things, and said he had a little job to do that morning, but if Bruce would come by at noon, he'd have a report for him. And if Bruce could bring an envelope with some Benjamin in it, 40 of them, please. That would be smart too. Truth. How hard could it be to find out the truth? Bruce wondered. The truth about his real birth had nagged him ever since. As a science project in 10th grade, he had done the genetic sequencing on his his parents' DNA and discovered, much to his surprise, that there was a 20 billion to 1 chance they were related. The uncertainty nagged him ever since, and now, with an annual salary about what Bill Gates made in a week, he had the money to find the truth, the real truth. His reverie was broken by the creak of the door opening behind him. Bubbles looked up. The goldfish in the aquarium looked up. The Rottweiler snoozing before the gunmetal steel desk looked up. An old man asleep on the couch in the waiting room rolled over and went back to sleep.
Oh my God.
Bruce turned around and looked, saw, pondered, and was amazed by the awesome Hulk coming in the door behind him. Hey, Babs, Stick accused fetchingly. How's Trix? Trix is gone. Has to go home early. Bubbles displayed resoundingly. Something about getting her hair done. Trix is bald. Stick survives. Well, she said something about an 11 a.m. shadow. Bubbles explained. Bruce stood by, listening to this inspiring exchange. The goldfish ate his lunch. The Rottweiler rolled over and parted. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore.
Oh my God. This is fucking UNESCO as all shit, this writing. Oh my God. It's like I could feel that whoever wrote this ended up just reading like the bald, wait, how is it called in English? I just know in French it's called la cantatrice chauve, but yeah, the bald thingy.
Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. Stick! He burst out, exploring. God damn it, Stick. Did you find my real birth certificate? Got it a week ago. Didn't you get my call? You called me yesterday. Bruce interpolated. I did. Stick inquired to himself. Must slip my mind to call you earlier. You got the bennies? Bruce reached into the breast pocket of his alligator hide leather jacket, but before he could pull his hand all the way out, the old man on the couch leapt to his feet and put a Desert Eagle 45 Magnum to Bruce's head.
Wait, what? The old man who was sleeping in the waiting room?
He's loaded.
What the fuck is that?
Hey, sweetheart, let me take that for you, the old man exclaimed. Jizz on the off chance you got a rod and not some dough. The old man slipped his hand down Bruce's pants, poked around a bit, then reached into Bruce's jacket and took the wad of money. He's clean, Stick, and he's got a schlong like Detroit. The old man declared. And this wad of dough ain't too shabby either.
Also, yeah, just for reference, I was looking up what I actually tried to talk about, and yeah, the name of the play was The Bald Soprano. Definitely
Nice.
should read that.
Yeah, next time. Thanks, Geezer. Stick pointed out to the geezer, who wasn't all that old, really. Just a tall, swarthy man in his early 60s with a snowflake scar on his hip from a commie round he took in the nom. Which changed the old man's life, whose name was Johnson, but everyone called him Joe, ruining his plans to be a male stripper and forcing him into a life of muscle for low-rent private eyes. Stick counted the money. Yeah, you got all the presidents here. Yes, here he is, sir.
The president. Yep, that's totally how I'm gonna pretty much consider money.
So how about the report? Bruce inquired. Oh yeah? Didn't I tell you on the phone? Stick inquired back at him. Dude, you're adopted. Which you probably should have figured out since your parents are both white and, well, you're black.
Dun, dun, dun.
And they told me they were light-skinned. Bruce screamed at his loving, adoring wife, Callie, twice his age. Well, she didn't look it, with all the good breeding, healthy living, and plastic surgery. Plus, Callie had inherited a wad from her dear beloved and quite dead husband, Henry Archer, biggest damn manufactured home make in the South. In Bruce's estimation, a rich middle-aged woman was a lot better looking than any young poor woman anyway.
What?
I guess. Honey, I'm sure your parents had your best interest at heart. Callie supplied soothingly. She fanned her ivory skin breasts with the report Stick had given Bruce. Adopted. Why couldn't they have told me the truth about my past? It was bad enough that I was horribly maimed in the auto accident when the truck driver ran the red light, slamming into our Cadillac and pinning my foot under the seat so that the only way I could escape the burning wreck was to saw off my dick toe with a Swiss Army knife. Do you know the humiliation I faced in the boys' gym?
Oh my
Sweetheart, at least you. Kelly snipped her thick tears, dripping off her luscious eyelashes and down the cavernous cleavage of her breasts. At least you had parents. At least you weren't raised like an evil stepchild by your long-lost uncles and aunts after your parents died in a terrorist attack in Crete. But my parents are white. Honkies. The oppressor to the brother. Bruce roared menacingly.
Where is this fucking going?
Well, they sure look black with the big afros and the Kent cloth suits. Collie interjected.
What the fuck?
It's hair dye and a really good perm. Bruce waved the report from Stick with the DNA analysis and the anthropologic analysis and the birth certificate that said parents white, child black.
Yeah, that's totally what's written on birth certificates, by the way.
Oh my god.
Oh, that was
knew?
okay. So that was
Callahan.
written by Michael Armstrong. Good job, because holy shit, this is fucking an acid trip in words.
Who knew? Collie analyzed. They fooled me. And you have to admit, your mama sure makes some mean chitlins. Collie tossed her thick, deep black locks over her shoulder, the curls falling to her hips and bouncing imploringly off her bookshelf ass.
What's a bookshelf ass?
It's a bookshelf
Is
ass.
that just like the Minecraft ass? Like, it's a voxel ass that's just an ugly polygonal butt?
So big and boxy. She leaned in closer to Bruce, stood on her tiptoes and ran her fingers across his well-muscled chest. So, you're adopted? It's not like it's the end of the world. But now I know the truth, Bruce beseeched. Now I know my true heritage, and I, Bruce Lucent, know who I really am. Who are you? Kelly articulated questioningly. If those honkies aren't your parents, then who? Why? My Stick never told me. Let me see that report. Bruce snarled, grabbingly. He grabbed the report from Collie, and as he took away the crude fan, which kept her cool in the sweltering Atlanta heat, Collie broke out into a sweat as deep as the Amazon River and just as muddy. Bruce ripped through the pages until he came to a crude photocopy of his actual birth certificate, the one with his real mother's name. His father being unknown, although he was rumored to have been a prominent segregationist senator. His own mother a black maid, like his mother before her. My mother is, he rumored hesitatingly. Collie snatched the report back. Wanda June Jessica, she articulated. Why? She's the owner of Jessica's for Ladies, the hair products company with a net worth of $55 million. Because they make such wonderful women's beauty products, like Jessica's glorious tresses, the dye, and conditioner I use to make my own incredibly gorgeous long locks so silky and thick.
Who paid you to do this infomercial? What the fuck?
She's my mother? Bruce implored wonderingly. So it would seem. Collie slunk over to her stud of a husband and ripped off his alligator jacket, his tight black jeans, and his silk underpants, the ones with the little hearts on them. She gave him for Valentine's Day. She was pleased to see he wore. Let's celebrate, she husked seductively. Why, yes, Bruce suggested. Perhaps dinner, champagne, dancing, maybe a show. Oh, not that silly. Collie stimulated erotically as she locked her legs around him and planted sloppily lipstick-drenched kisses upon his chest. I was thinking maybe, visiting Detroit. She winked.
Who would willingly visit Detroit? And who calls a dick Detroit?
I don't. They do, apparently. In Atlanta, they call the dicks Detroit.
Oh my What? That was supposed to be a callback to the whole guy on the fucking couch with a desert eagle, which just makes sure that they don't fucking. Alright, I'm going back. Alright. Alright. Chapter 3.
Would want to visit Detroit.
Okay.
What's only 66 left? Wow.
Oh, oops. Wait.
Getting
Where
close to
did
the
my camera go?
So, what did you do?
I don't know.
What's happening on this? What fell over or something?
I don't know. Alright, now I guess it's just a Mario cam now. Alright, there we go. Besides, we're not seeing my face anyway, so hey, let's show Mario instead.
Let's go to Detroit.
At Water Stream. Yeah, speaking of, hold on. And elevate cams.
A baby that's made out of youngness. So I guess that's what Detroit Become Human was about.
Yeah, it's an advertising campaign for Detroit. Oh, there we go. Now we got an actual Mario cam. You're perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Chapter 32. Like the canals in the city that had given it his name, Andrew Venice had a tendency run through the shallow, and he could not rein in a tendency in his thoughts as he sat down on the hard plastic seat boot to interview with Yvonne Perrin. The curvaceous redhead was stacked like the cards in a crook poker game, and exceptionally well preserved. He felt a twinge of regret and something else as he considered their tawdry surroundings. They were sitting in a humble, hearty hamburger shop near her place of work. Thank you for meeting with me. Okay. Miss Perrin, he began to say. He could have bitten his tongue as he realized the double entendre, inadvertent, but double nonetheless. Please, call me Yvonne, she whispered brightly. Yvonne. The name was a derivative of Ivan, itself another version of John, a word with sexual connotation that made themselves known to Andrew.
I see.
He was a cop, after all, and had a cop mind. Emotions boiled through him, but he controlled them, even as he and his officers, fellow of the law, strove to control the scum who raged in the streets of Atlanta, the city that he loved so and had sworn to protect. I'm sorry it had to be during my lunch break, though, Perrin said as she opened the plastic pod that held the item she had chosen from the signboard menu, a humble hamburger. I have a very busy day today. No, that's okay, Andrew said. Then he blurted, we could have gone someplace nicer. He was an exceptionally well set up man, after all. Oh, this is fine, Yvonne said. I do like hamburgers. She opened the greasy bag that had been given her by the equally greasy young Hardy's attendant. Her hair was the same rich red as the ketchup she dabbed on her freedom fries. Fuck off.
Wow, it's the early 2000s, all right. Guys, remember freedom fries?
Yeah, I remember that fucking crap. That was like good old innocent times. It's just my god. Now I'm taking a guess. Okay, where was I again? Oh, yeah, Andrew had opted for the roast beef sandwich himself, even though it was, as advertised, sliced in and piled high. Already it was as ashes in his mouth. Hamburger sandwiches had never been his favorite, but to see the smooth sesame seed studded bun that now luxuriated between Yvonne Perrin's neatly manufactured fingertips was to no envy for the succulent sandwich they held. How he wished what these delicate digits could hold him. But enough of that. I need to talk to you about the Archer case, he said with grim resignation as he bit into the sandwich and felt the rubbery meat product part before the blades of his incisor teeth, one of which was chip and needed bonding. Anyway, Yvonne asked. She paused mid-bite. I thought that was an accident! Poor Callie! We're just exploring the possibilities, he said. His mind raced at the suggestiveness of his own word. How could he say such a thing to a woman he had only just met? And yet, Yvonne Perrin's flashing green eyes and a cantilevered bosom seemed to offer possibilities that Andrew would dearly have loved to explode. How's this widow holding up? Yvonne asked. She batted her eyes at him. Such an attractive woman! I do hope that she isn't too devastated! Well, it's hard not to be devastated when your husband dies in a mysterious car accident. Even if he's 20 years older than you, it could have reasonably been expected to predecease, even given Mother Archer altered. Said it was a pathetic.
Hold on.
You see, it's a shame that he died in this car accident because he was in good shape, and he probably will have died way after you did, you fucking old witch. Henry took such good care of himself, he once said. Even the physically fit suffer when they end up with an engine plug in their laps. What the fuck? Andrew is the master cup of the school of comforting people. He watched her heat. He liked watching her heat. He liked the way her delicate fingers lifted the sandwich and her bright, white, sharp teeth shredded it. From living flesh to shredded meat, to meat patty, to shredded meat again. It was as if the humble beef were experiencing the entire cosmic cycle. Only to become living flesh once more, thanks to the biological processes of the lovely Yvonne Perrin. Oh my god. I don't like to think about that, he once said. Why exactly is it you wanted to speak with me, Detective Venice? Andrew could think of 1,000 things he would like to say to her, but limited himself to asking, did Archer have any enemies? Of course he did, Yvonne said. He was a millionaire! The blooded parasites of the ruling class always engender hatred among the workers, after all.
Wow.
You know, the lower class plight that the right wing always wishes to solve. I mean, specific enemies, Andrew asked. Yvonne thought for a long moment. You mean people who would want him dead? She asked pensively. Dead, or terribly injured, Andrew replied, enjoying another bite of tasty Hardee's roast beef. People survive car accidents, after all. Well, I certainly never wished him ill, Yvonne responded. Her eyes lit up, as if illumined from within by the fires of desire. No, ill is the last thing I would have wanted him to be. What kind of man was he? Andrew asked. He wanted to light a cigarette, as he always did after a meal or sex, but the repressive restaurant regulations imposed by an increasingly authoritarian government forbade him even that simple pleasure as his heart broke under the weight of Yvonne's obvious high regard for the dead man who was not there with them. Very virile, Perrin said brightly. An outdoor man, fond of race car driving and barbecue cooking. Barbecue? Andrew prompted. For some reason, the reference rang a siren in his memory. Well, grilling really, Perrin continued. The Archers, will host cookouts at that big house of theirs. He will insist on doing all the cookery himself. The cookery? Is that an actual word?
Probably.
I mean, if we have to ask, that's probably a bad sign. Just say it.
I think it is cookery.
He specializes. Oh, no. Andrew shook his head and snorted in silent surprise. A millionaire industrialist who dabbled as a backyard chef. It could only happen in Atlanta, the city where tulips grew on trees.
The city where what?
I don't think that's where tulips grow. He specialized in hamburgers, Perrin continued. Thick, juicy hamburgers. He will start from scratch, often raising the steer himself, then slaughtering and butchering it, and grinding even the best cuts. Then he would take those huge viral hands of his and shape the meats into thick patties, thicker and juicier than even the thickest and juiciest steaks. Then he will grill them himself like a master surgeon. Surgeons don't grill people. He really was a amazing, she said. A tear trickled from one of her electric green eye. I will miss him so very much. What about his wife? Kelly? Perrin asked. Her voice held a faint note of disdain. Oh, she's very nice, but she can cook. That's not what I meant, Andrew asked. Would she have any reason to want him dead? And does she have any knowledge of automobile mechanics? Such as how brakes work? Callie? Oh, don't be silly. She hasn't worked on a car in years, Perrin said, giggling at the very thought of her slightly older and slightly less well-preserved, but still a comely friend with a wrench in her hand. Not since that Chrysler she kept running with spit and baling wire back in the 80s. That's not what I meant either. Well, not really. How did she get along with her husband? Andrew probed. Fully half his sandwich lay on the tray before him, unconsumed, like the leftover fruitcake at Christmas. But he was not hungry anymore for food or for Yvonne Perret. Suddenly, he cursed himself for falling prey to her sinister charms. He was sure now that she had said something of import, but he could not recall it, and know that it would be terribly rude and suspicious-making to ask the lovely and vivacious person seated before him to repeat herself. Kelly loved Henry, Yvonne said. Just the other day she told me that she loved him as much as he had if they got married in Las Vegas. I want to cry when I think of what I said to her after that. I said, how could she tell when they were both so drunk the day they got married in Las Vegas? She leaned close. That's where they met, you know, in Las Vegas, drunk at the casino. Andrew shook his head and snorted in silent surprise. A millionaire industrialist with a gambling habit who met his future wife in a Las Vegas casino after having too much to drink. It could only happen to someone who live in Atlanta, the city where tulips grew on trees. Where tulip grows on tree. Do you know what status of Henry Archer's will? Andrew asked. His will? Why would he need a will? He was married, you know that, Yvonne said. She looked at the remain of his meal, and her tongue was a bright red finger, the color of flame. Either because of the ketchup she had consumed, or because of her own robust good health, as she liked her lips. I'm still hungry, she said. Her own food was long gone. You want anything more? No, Andrew rejoined. He shook his head. No, I don't think so. In fact, I have to leave shortly for another interview. Oh? Yvonne asked. Is this an open investigation? I thought it was just an accident. That's probably all it was, Andrew agreed. But we have to look into these things. He grinned crookedly. Yeah, okay, that's not crookedly, but whatever. Being a detective isn't like they make it out to be on TV, Yvonne. We don't all live in New York or Los Angeles, and we spend a lot of time looking into things that other people take for granted, like car accidents involving millionaire industrialists. Took his hand in her, thrilling to the feel of the blood that pulsed through her deallocated vein. But I enjoyed this, he said. So did I, Yvonne said, replying to him. Alright, yeah. Chapter 33. Do you actually want to read this?
Yeah, okay.
Alright.
So let's see.
Already this chapter is a mess. Oh my god.
No, it's okay. Chapter 33. As Isadora Trent dreamed sleepily, her red hair spread like a cloud. Like a clouded tent around her pillow. Her face exploded with joy. Oh, I wish I was back there, she thought. She missed it so badly. Maybe she'd get to go back someday. She thought about the hot, dry heat, about the grit of sand. Oh, how it felt to be penetrated by those huge mosquitoes.
Also, by the way, for people who've been following along at home and everything, Isadora Trent was a man before. And now she changed gender for no reason.
Oh, yes. She was a masochist of the first degree. She shivered in her sleep, thinking about it. goose pimples formed, getting at the tips of her toes, pushing out farther the day-old stubble on her legs, continuing up her stomach until her nipples were pointing out.
What?
Then they reached her neck, and her trembles tangled her hair into a mess. She'd have to brush it good when she woke up, but she'd enjoy the tangles, no doubt. A sound intruded on her consciousness. Little bell sound. Unknowingly, she worked it into her dream so that an ice cream truck was making its way across the desert. and then when it got to her, it wasn't even ice cream at all, but instead was some kind of liquor bar. She didn't know why. So she thought she'd order something frozen, but the girl there just looked at her cattily and told her that they only sold soft drinks. Damn arrogant woman. But then the sound changed, and it wasn't a little bell anymore. Now it sounded like it might be scratching, or maybe banging. Or maybe it wasn't that at all, but maybe someone knocking. She pushed herself out of sleep and tried to think. But she didn't wake up fast enough. What could she do to make herself wake up, she wondered. Maybe she ought to pinch herself. So her dream self reached out and did just that. Ow! That hurt! Now she really was awake. Since she sat up in bed and pushed the covers off, noticing that her nipples were still erect. The sound repeated itself, and it was a knock. Wow. How could she have thought it was anything else? She got out of bed sleepily and entirely raised her hands above her head, stretching, while she decided what to do. Maybe she should answer it. Okay, that's a good idea. So she went to the door. She wasn't dressed, so she thought she ought to grab a gun on the way down.
No need for clothes, just a gun. Welcome to the South, motherfucker.
It wouldn't do for it to be a bad guy at the door when she didn't have time to get clothes on. So she reached under her bed and fished out the gun safe she kept there. She put in her secret code, 6969. No one would ever think of that. Once she heard the tumblers click over, she pulled the gun out and got out of bed. She didn't keep the bullets with the gun, just to be safe, in case her adorable little brown-haired niece with the cutest smile ever visited. So then she went to her closet to get the bullets. There, she thought after she did. Now she wouldn't be afraid to go to the door naked.
Why would you go to the door naked? Put on like a fucking bathrobe or some shit.
It's the South. It's cool. She slowly made her way downstairs, one slow step at a time. Once she got to the bottom, she listened and realized that she didn't hear the sound anymore. Well, she decided to peek out the spy hole anyway. Nothing there. She went around and looked out the window on the side, but she didn't see anyone from there either. Well, she humphed. No telling what it was. She still had her trusty revolver, though, so she stuck it in her bathrobe and made it for the kitchen. She'd get a midnight snack to tide her over until morning. Maybe some kippers and cream cheese. Those were one of her favorites. As she made her way to the kitchen, she passed some of her favorite pictures on the wall. She sighed, looking at them, both sadly and happily. She sure loved those people a lot. Some of them weren't even around anymore. Some of them were. Well, maybe she'd see them tomorrow.
Also, yeah, someone had just raised the point that suddenly she had a bathrobe. But maybe in Atlanta night, a bathrobe is just like being naked.
Maybe it's see-through or something.
Yeah, I guess.
When she got to the kitchen, she saw that the light was on. Oh no. She was sure she hadn't left it that way. She steadied the automatic in her grip and readied her finger on the hair trigger. What she saw surprised her. Someone, his back, and she noticed. Fine backside. To her, it was in her refrigerator. What were they eating? Thinking about that chocolate cake she had left over from the wedding last week, she aimed and pulled the trigger. It's my cake.
So what were you saying about sensible and safe gun ownership earlier, chat?
She wasn't any dainty lady in waiting around to be picked on. She was one tough broad. Person startled at the shot and then grabbed their leg and fell down, moaning like it was the end of the world. Oh, the guy said. Oh. She wasn't sorry, though. She was getting ready to shoot him again when she paused.
What the fuck is your problem, Isadora Trent?
She couldn't help but notice that, in his turmoil and fear for his life, the man had gotten an erection underneath his thin white polo shorts. It looked familiar. She studied his build some more, noted his red hair by the light of the refrigerator door that was still open as he held his leftover cake in his hands. Oh no, it was that babe from the gym. Shit, she bonked him a couple times already. You think she'd remember that ass? She preened. You probably just couldn't stay away and wanted seconds. She purred happily. She still had it, no doubt about it. What was that guy's name? Suffering Succotash? She struggled to remember, to make her mind vomit forth the information she knew. It had digested at some point. She couldn't really be forgiven for forgetting, since she had just banged the guy in the shower room.
What the fuck is going on?
You seemed to be staring at one of the guys showering the whole time while they were going at it, but she was sure he just wanted to see the guy's reaction at him getting fucked. Such a hot babe. Getting to fuck such a hot babe. There we go.
At this point, I'm just thinking, hey, Useworm is not here, but he's still watching over us. Why did they bring that here?
Oh, Steven. That was it. Steven Suffering. No. Steven Suffern. Yeah, that was it. That's right. He was still moaning.
He fucking shot Steven Suffern, aka the guy who did the death hand job to Rory Stevens in the fucking leg.
She went over to him and prodded him with her toe. Hey, what were you doing taking my leftover cake? Girls are protected of their chocolate, you know. You should know better than that. He smiled sadly at her. I couldn't help it, he said, as he choked out his words. I was hungry, and I looked so good. Well, it was a prelude, huh? Were you going to sneak up and biff me? You bad boy. I can tell by that big old bulge in your pants that you must have been thinking of me. He coughed wetly. It made a gross noise, and she was turned off by it. She looked down at the bulge in his pants and decided she didn't care, though. Well, you ought to be more careful. I know. I don't know what I was thinking, he said more morosely. Can you get up? She asked. She leaned down beside him. I'm already up. He laughed weakly. The sense of humor made her smile. How could she forget how nice he was? Well, maybe we could have some fun with you right there. She
Maybe
said
take him
sexily.
to the hospital first.
She pulled apart the flaps of her mint green terry cloth robe and flashed him. Mm-hmm. Come and get me. He hacked again grossly, though. I wish I could, Isidore. I wish I could. He looked up at her with wet eyes like he'd had too many drinks or had just gotten kicked in the groin.
Kick in the groin by a gun.
You know, I really love you. I know I could never tell you, but I really do. God help me, I really do.
I love you, so that's why I'm breaking in your home in order to steal your cake.
Oh man. She smiled at him. I know you do, honey. You can't help it. It always happens that way. She blamed herself again.
Always.
A fine young man like this, she could still grab him. What a dame she was. You really seem to be bleeding a lot. So, Steven, I really do need you to get up. Get in the floor really messy. Could you maybe go to our porch or something? She smiled, certain her next phrase would convince him to move. I'll join you. She simpered prettily at him in what she knew was her sexiest consonants.
What the fuck?
He coughed again, then reached down to his privates, like he was making sure they were still there.
What?
He left big
Why
red
did their
handprints.
testicles just go missing?
He left big red handprints on them. You could certainly judge his length by his hands. And they said that was a myth. Ha, she said. She thought knowingly. All things have a basis in fact.
Fucking God. Oh my God.
Hope Steven's gonna be okay. She scooted closer to him and decided she might as well put the gun back in the pocket of her robe. The silky material sparkled like a ruby in the dim light from the refrigerator door. Steven? Ka-ka-ka. He made a horrible noise. Steven? Weakly came his reply. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. She stopped hesitantly. You don't really sound fine. Are you sure? I'm fine. She smiled bewitchingly at her. What?
Yeah, what?
Don't worry for me.
Yeah,
Well-
what the fuck? Suddenly Steven changed gender?
Well, she frowned at him. She frowned down at him. If you're fine, can you please move? I really don't want all that blood right in front of the fridge. He laughed heartily. He always did have a sense of humor. Then he coughed, that wet cough again, laid his head down, and didn't make any more sound. Steven?
I can't fucking believe that Steven Suffern got fucking shot to death for breaking into some lady's house who was once a man in order to get her chocolate cake.
Died for chocolate cake.
Yep. Alright, and now, time for chapter 34. Bruce walked around anymore. Some people might halt to her practice eye had her. I am so silky and braid shoulders. At 66, men with a few feet away formed their languid gazes. I know I was hungry, and impelling him lying naked. She slowly made for a man could join you. I know what I ought to take you probably shall have. He wants it worriedly. About think what to wear? Then they reached under her time and got out and did you find my real mother's name is fancy, rented by a passing delivery truck. Well, Maggie O, Andrew, you, but I know my leftover cake. Girls are here at one of a pool and the pool cleaner maneuvering is surprised at. He smiles certain her way down cruel and flash him. Come and get this big afros and indescribably tender. His hands move surely. Recover for a miss. She'd have noticed if it had so impetuously across the pelting Georgia girl grill. The Georgia girl grill? I don't remember this. Isaac's brick red complexions until morning. Maybe some kippers in sea to this inspiring exchange. The truth about Margaret, he thought, and there he was making any ladies happy until he came away. Down international airports for them. He was on the sidewalk behind them. It will do it. Margaret studied her sexiest countenance. He was the building opposite highlighted Isaac's thought of. A man expected to him and sent me. He coughed wetly. Will ruin his body, rinsing twice the usual number of that. Once she got the goods in his form, and that was rumored to cancel her favorite. As she made his exit, gratified that you must be as if he wanted. It was time to go to the money man. I can't imagine. Her voice faded as muddy. Bruce stood by the short hairs. He pleased to talk to such wonderful women's beauty products like he did that morning from Margaret's lips and tongue. They needed a man who sees us, growled Isaacs. She thought about me, she asked. She hasn't slept well last night, and pulled the floor and then grabbed the report for him, and then told her smiling reflection silently. Plenty of her robe shook lift. The avenged age of the wall with delight. She was a rolling boil, only in a hint. My mother, my little Maggie. Oh, Andrew, you said? You know, I half tell by that big old man declared. And this Penny was a man to make that phone had gone into the chlorine-scented depth. That man grabbed Callie too. He had done trickster years. Face, red hair, spread like this. The club staff member polishing glasses. No, Reuben said. If I did, a stick had given Bruce. Adopted! Why couldn't they wear and shut, admitting one knew about what I'd explained? Yassies! In years. But it was. He fitted into a sweat as he held his well-muscled chests. So you're adopted? It's not that silly. Kelly slunk. Shake of a look like him. Isaac spoke everything of 55 million because they both knew about Penelope. He laughed weakly, his sense of humor welded. Then they reached under her medium short brown hair. Do you know True even better, baby? He knows something, thought of something, myself. She put in the sweltering Atlanta heat. Kelly interjected. It's hair into a hot tip on the kids? Fine, sir. Going to the geezer. Who sees us? Growled Isaacs. She smiled at his side. Red-eye-cured lips, except he had a rolling boil honey man whom I really love, Missy. Could it be? Could be anybody, he said, with the report from Stick, with Penny for Stick to be married before supper? And Archer Venice, for the pair of cigarettes and this wet nose, est, will not let me take that for Friday, said elegantly. He paused for good. The rain didn't look like what it was. She was a snowflake scar on those big red handprints on the side, but he kept there. She smiled bewitchingly at Will be upset if he wanted to scream. Wanted to talk, Isaacs grunted and worry about it. Goose pimples formed beginning at him. I wish I knew my foot under with his loving, adoring wife Callie, twice his age of 40, and you just do it. Margaret, you hot little nurse were there. Don't worry about me, she thought. She puts in his pants again and on her shoulder, the wall. She was a midnight snack to pay to let a horrible noise. Stephen? Weekly came to him, the teenage hacker who had anything about it. Who knew? Kelly stimulated Gerald ironically. What the fuck is Gerald? As loudly as if a rod, and as he homie dead Thursday. Oh my god. I think I need it. Perfect! The hotshot software development Bruce stood on her consciousness. A little longer? Get me, Margaret. You surely don't know that. Mr. Man said nothing. Then they reached her neck and flipped through the door. She preened. He turned away with me. Quickly! Inside! She really wanted either. She surely loved those hankies, aren't your parents? And her face been struggling to be amongst that somebody famous. Abraham Lincoln. Oh my god. She went over to Memphis and gave a black, and he wouldn't take you away and want to scream. What either? She rushed to him and gave one more thing. Will not open and shut, admitting one and hunt within. Isaacs couldn't imagine. Her voice behind him, and then looked again. Type another letter, then you can love me off balance into her own incredibly gorgeous copper-haired Penny. Had at his take-off checklist, got to the pictures. He had the crude fans, which were the club staff member polishing glasses. Flies like a peach juice decade? It's important we talk. Isaac knew what I was on. Oh no! She simpered prettily at him in a code orange alert, that was it. That's right. He wasn't worried about what had sufficient time to get married, trembling with sympathy as she stepped forward. Say, I know my little Maggie. Oh, Andrew, you know somebody at the picture, he told himself. She leaned in case her dreamed so badly. Maybe some fresh squeezed peach pack into the pool. He stood, watered. The ladies of the board can get up and down at it. If those pacers aren't your acquaintance, a ma'am, said the pilot, tipping his belt. His fancy, rented by now has come, he said morosely. Can you? But I just thought to keep the two in the gutter, maybe banging? Or maybe it was that way. She didn't know that. Isaac took his privates, like this. Penny will be married, and the hair heat wave shimmered off by it. She had been fun, but it was that guy's name? She couldn't really be forgiven for ladies. The geezer who got into Bruce's jacket and took away the door opening behind him. Bubbles responded irritatingly. He'll be married in a few words in his pants again and fished out the truth. Bruce waved. The other guy wasn't going to be glad to rain. Thought as he was rumored hesitatingly. Kelly analyzed. He fooled me. Well, he had his life. The man slipped his take-off checklist. Got out of them. It weren't even Bruce ought, and once she cried. You should know somebody at all about getting her mind vomit for the floor where his cubicle was. On his zip from a crude photocopy of consequences she kept there. She still had heard right. Penny said he had it come to its tight skirt. Did Kelly like a peach juice? It's important. He needed a hot tip and didn't know. You should have figured out like this. Penny's was gorgeous sunshine. On the rail of client, she rushed to the bottom. She was a hot tip on the sound change, and down in his pants again in the Kent's cloth suits. Kelly had inherited a terrorist attack in her office. I think of that. Once she got to her rear and cried. But my blackberries here. Well, the bennies? Bruce reached into her closet to his van. The top half of them will not let him touch of reality. Although her eyes open, crinkling her short hair trigger. What could be she heard, and soon they make such a minute observation. Behind him, the club staff's craze. Of course. Who knew? Kelly slunk over at a man with sympathy as he held his pants again to avoid saying anything white, to speak about the behavior of her tight polka dot dress, the Homeland Security system, and pulled him to the side. Help! He exclaimed. Let me look black with him, especially the creak of his mind. He had his mind. He fitted into Bruce's jacket and tie, his hand up it. He discovered his name was too small for Friday. Said it's not open for such a call from a commie round, he told himself. She surely loved those huge mosquitoes. Oh, yes. She knows some quick revivers at this time and kept her cools in the guy of the pocket of her fingers across the desert. And then when is he gonna be back? Bruce limped around and looked, saw, pondered, and said he who had thought. Believe it, baby, muttered Venice, tossing aside his paper and push the cleaners. I could. He wasn't worried about Margaret, he said morosely. Can you write there? She gave him, hey, Babs. Stick pointed out over the hair force, especially when Bruce came to a hot tip on the wall. Unlock 1, when Andrew Venice was going to the door, undulating provocatively as he ran afoul of man who wasn't all the way down the seat so badly. Maybe some kippers, and they went to keep a tent around them both. Afterward, Andrews, you think we can up the black? Who knew? Kelly tossed her gunmetal, steel gray disc, peeking out the letter, looked again, type another letter. Bruce loosened. No why. So she thought she'd order something frozen, but nobody does anything white to make herself wake up. Nobody does anything white to make herself wake up. What a
That's
fucking glorious phrase. All things in life and Isaac's brick red complexions until morning. Maybe she'd get married? Trembling with you right mind would go out to the floor and Isaacs hesitated. He wanted to do what Andrew Venice was always important. They felt to have been he who wasn't at all. She was hungry, and the son of the money man. I just lost the time. Once she got reason to talk with the big toe with him, that was it. Stephen Weekly, sounded his reply. I'm fine. Don't worry about what it was. She struggled to a rolling boil only faintly flawed by listening. You such a hot little nurse worth her medium brown, short brown hair. Do you need you to be married? Trembling with delight, she heard the other guy gave massages and off my back, and she had taken him and planted the sloppy lipstick-drenched kisses upon his chest. I was back there. She couldn't help him over the edge of the very best of the ladies. He laughed, weakly. His BlackBerry was a girl to appreciate the usual number of white, carefully kept teeth. Just remember, I've got to her peerless eyes. No, darling, it stopped very suddenly. What was awake? She does seem to be more sound. Stephen? The rain was coming down at him. I could only break us. I could. He paused for 2 weeks. How it felt to actually harm the Saris sometime had once dated the fridge. I dated the fridge. He had his relationship simple. I don't know about that. Discreet, between the day. Well, he was pacing, and driving Bubbles looked up. The smile broadened, and quite dead husband Henry Archer, biggest nuisance when you get any closer. Henry Archer, the biggest nuisance when you have clothes on. Oh, dear God, the 60-year-old pervert is about to ravage someone again in his den of scum and villainy and debauchery. Oh, my God. So how about one more noted as years, although he was rumored to watch the pool to get married by Elvis. Elvis? Venice looked out farther at the end of them, and to be married, in case her pretty face toward a tall, swarthy man and made her smile. How hard could Morgan have some kippers and grimace when he discovered much to her across the deeply carpeted floor? Heedless of consequences, she asked voice seductively. Why, yes, Bruce ripped through the frosted glass window of the Tangles. No doubt about getting her, I couldn't help it. It made for it was, as well put a Desert Eagle 44 Magnum to her high, crinkling her redder trigger. What were you in your pants that was still pining over and went to the businessman? So yeah, that's chapter 34, and I think that's where we're going to actually just stop. But yeah, for people who did not actually, understand what the hell was going on, that was generated through the Bonsai Story Generator software that ended up being made by the fine people who ended up making this. I'm not sure if this is still online. Oh, actually it is. Oh, fuck yes.
Ah, nice.
So, alright, I'm just gonna send the link toward to this for people who actually want to try out the Bonsai Story Generator. Just pick whatever you want from any kind of different stories or bit of text that you've ever written, and, well, just have fun checking out what other garbage that we're gonna have. In fact, I don't know, let's test it out on something before we actually, give it a go. Alright, at this point, we need to get ourselves, well, something to read. What could be good? You know what, let's actually just get the Atlanta Night Wikipedia article. Alright. We've got plenty of wait, are you human? Go back and try that again.
You're not human.
I guess not. Maybe this thing just doesn't like Internet Explorer. Not Internet Explorer, but Chrome maybe. But yeah, sadly I cannot take chapter 34. I do not have access to the text itself. I think I might not have waited long enough. Okay, now I shall not be not a robot. Okay, there we go. Atlanta Night is a rule of their critics came from the same chapter number 12. Shira Demon, they are non-standard and claim to carry the books they tell you are a plane. No, it's a group of the book, revealed the publisher and claimed that PublishAmerica described of itself as literary parasites and fantasy writers because it is actually complete lack of science fiction. The manuscript PDF. Oh my god, what a fucking... Yeah, I think I need to have the browser. Hold on a bit. Okay, alright, we actually have it over here. Kind of. Alright, hold on a bit. I think we need to embiggen this a little bit. How do you embiggen stuff into Chrome? Okay.
Embiggen.
Alright, there we go. So yeah, University of Work, so has the working title of Outline 13 and 15, a computer program that have never existed, does not reflect subsequent edits to carry the same segment of science fiction and fantasy author yourself. Author's Market, never trust the decision to begin August 2011. But on 16 May 2011, the crowdfunding campaign ended without explanation. Spilling and a complete lack of the article audio help. More spoken article, Travis 2005. Alright, therefore, beware of Atlanta Knights is a group of published author with the previous chapter that are 2 chapter 8, Alan Steele chapter. Just like I did not necessarily think nothing but the Elizabeth parts. There's gonna be a lot of gibberish. Oh, alright, there we go. At one point, PublishAmerica posted articles on their critics came from those communities. Those derogatory remarks influenced the working title of the chapters 34. Characters change gender and claim to meet their standards. Oh, the book and grammar are usually the proverbial wheel at fantasy because many of the books they publish since one of them. Yep, totally sensical. The authors from the loudest, just like the sci-fi and race, they tell you are deliberately low quality work. Oh my god. The authors, they tell you are low quality work. Take that, you fucking jerkwads.
It's true.
Never trust a bad fic. Oh, alright, author's market. Only trust your own eyes preparation. In retaliation, a deliberately low quality work complete with obvious grammatical error, nonsensical passage, and 17 2 different chapters. Submission, the movie. Absolute right, water cooler. It is a vanity press that all the experts. Oh, archive from the sci-fi and fantasy writers because it is a bad book written by 2 different chapter submission. The high of their critics came from the original on 5 authors. Oh, unless you are a plane. On 24th January 28, 2005, accessed February 2011. Atlanta Knights dated 2016 1-3 and 15. Oh. No, it's a day and fantasy writer because many of the article never trust the article. Archive from the working title of contributor Andrew Burr, Atlanta Knights is a vanity press. Under McDonald's direction, the books They Die and are complete with obvious grammatical error, nonsensical passage, and how to be seen as to test of PublishAmerica's claim contain 1 background. Author's market. Never trust the books. They tell you are Turkey. Yep, never trust the turkey or the book. Oh, author's market. Never trust the experts. But Alice, the merely regrettable. God, I love the author's market. Now they come up with the best slogans. Atlanta Knight was missing. Chapter 8. Alan Steele. Chapter 4. Oh, author's market. Never trust the lesser gods, writers, because many of them, but such is actually a distant future, does not require believable everyday character. Obviously, and rejected, most of the review come from a revision of Argon Reference 9. Oh, the manuscript was offered to accept only high-quality manuscript. Critics have it easier. Oh, Atlanta Knight and fantasy genre have no clue about science fiction and fantasy authors under the pseudonym Travesty. Alright, Nielsen Aiden. Teresa Nielsen Aiden's review said, "The world is life." What a deep review. The world is life. Alright, Teresa Nielsen, Aiden's review, the novel created in February 2011, the crowdfunding campaign did. Ow. This is like the one part which is kind of normal sounding. Oh, the University of Atlanta Night is a distant future, does not reflect subsequent edits to do in the middle of science fiction and fantasy horrors, with obvious grammatical error, nonsensical passages, and grammar are a sci-fi or depth fantasy, because many of the chapter submission the author subsequently published always first ask them what genre they write. If it's sci-fi or fantasy author yourself. Alright, Author's Market. Never trust the article Atlanta Night. At the website further stated that the company received over 70 manuscripts for publication. It's unfair, but the one who were also attracted some highly derogatory public remark about science fiction and co-direct the company received. So yeah, that's the bonsai tree for you, and that's gonna be it for Atlanta Nights tonight. So thank you everybody for coming along to the stream. I hope you enjoyed it, and well, I hope you enjoyed the good old journey of insanity that we ended up having. Also, thank you Killer MC for being alongside in order to help me read this.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for the final stream of this, where we're finally going to finish reading this book, and then we're gonna move on to some other stuff. So anyway, let us see who is actually streaming right now. Oh, alright, we just read bad prose, so I guess let's go to good prose now. I see Author Blues is currently streaming more Phoenix Wright, so yeah, let's go and check out in order to be reminded of what good writing is for the most part.
I've already forgotten.
I mean, there's nothing to remember about that book. That's all that there is to it. So thank you everybody, and see you next time.
Later.